Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and today I'd like to talk to you about Pluto, which is stationing direct. It's actually technically overnight on the 14th, and I'll show you that chart in a moment. Actually, maybe we'll just jump in and look at that chart. But actually, what I want to talk about is hang on, I think I've got it here. Yeah, there we are. It's the Plutonian, very Plutonian revelation of secrets and things that are coming to light in the last couple of days. Now, Pluto has been at this degree. It's stationing direct on the 14th of October. I use universal time because you're watching in from all over the place. Universal time corresponds to, in this case, British summertime -1. So that's the basically London time. It's 3:53 a.m. So that would be nearly 10 p.m. on the East Coast of North America. And then do the math for the rest. So for most of us, it's on the 14th of October. For North and South America, it's the 13th. It doesn't really matter because Pluto has been at this degree for so long. And it's not something rapid like a lunation, which you tend to feel more powerfully, unless you have something specifically at this degree. And we're going to get there. It's also on the same day, so today, 13th of October, as I'm recording this, Venus moves into Libra. And that only happens like 6 hours before Pluto actually stations. And this is, again, one of these interesting correspondences because Venus is also moving into a trine with Pluto, and that creates a really favorable aspect, a very favorable, supportive aspect between Venus and Pluto, which is extremely favorable for money accumulation, relationships, financial situations, and so on, depending on your natal charts. Now, again, we can look at this on an individual level only if we see your actual chart. And what I'm telling you here is going to be a little bit more general. So there's a lot to say about this particular direct station. But before I go into the details of this chart and how it's all panning out, I want to come back to this past weekend. This is my third attempt at doing this video, and each time something came up in my personal life or something came up on the news, and I thought, oh, I need to know more about this. And then my personal and social life intervened, and I thought, okay, that's what's going to happen now. And that's very Plutonian as well. As we're humming along, thinking things are looking one way, then all of a sudden something happens and it looks very, very different. And we just have to kind of ride with it. So Pluto in general represents everything to do with what is unconscious or buried beneath the surface. So it might not be necessarily unknown, it's just not known publicly or openly. It's pretty shifty energy. And Plutonian people are very powerful people. So we have this expression of plutocrats. And actually, many, many years ago already, well over a decade ago, I think it was Princeton University did a study of the United States. By the way, I talk about the United States because most of you are from there. I'm not, okay? So I actually was born in the States. I moved away. My parents moved me away when I was 4 months old. I grew up in Canada. I have an Irish father as well. So my parents are basically Canadian. I spent my life there until I left first for 1 year abroad at university in Paris. And then since 1990, I've lived abroad. I live in Europe. So when I talk about these political things, please drop your paradigm of right and left and MAGA and not MAGA, vaxxer, anti-vaxxer, all this nonsense, and listen to the information. Glean the information, and especially take information from people you don't agree with and don't like. It's a sign of intelligence to open your mind to new ideas. And if you only filter everything through people who share ideas with you, you just keep narrowing down your focus to the point of absolute stupidity. So keep a broad, open mind. I'm not giving you my political dogma. I'm giving you what the astrology is reflecting of the things going on. And it just so happens that the things that speak most loudly come often through the United States. Now, not only, that's only 4% of the world's population. So again, there's a lot going on in the world. It's just that I'm filtering this through events that trigger events in the broader world, okay? So this is not me speaking from a political perspective. This is me showing you what I understand with a relatively informed opinion. Check my channel details in my bio on my website if you need to know more. it's not just some rando astrology lady talking about these things. There's a lot going on that I understand from 35 years, even 40 years of studying geopolitics. So, with that aside, and by the way, I prefer to work with individuals. I'm a consulting astrologer. That's what I do. And my aim in working with astrology is to get people to advance through their own lives, to find peace and happiness in their own lives. But sometimes there are events that are so powerful, and this is especially true when we have these planets around what's called the Aries point, like Neptune is currently now, Saturn was, along with Neptune for the summer, Northern Hemisphere summer. They affect all of us. These events are affecting all of us. And that's why I'm calling in some of these geopolitical things. And I stopped doing that for a long time because the comments are so ridiculous and so toxic at times because people have been educated to a point of stupidity that's a deliberate way of educating people to stop asking questions and stop listening to dissenting opinions. And somewhere in the last 30 years, that has become accelerated. It has become really difficult to speak to people on topics that they don't fully understand without them making it personal. So I'm going to keep doing this as long as I don't have to keep defending toxic comments in the most of them I just ignore or I just delete them from the channel if they get really personal. I'm not here to take your backlash. I'm here to share what I understand about astrology. So the whole point of, and that little diatribe is over now. So I'm coming back to this astrology of the moment, which is concerning the Pluto direct station, but also concerns a number of dates that are relevant to the events of this past few days. So, as I said, the Pluto station at 1 degree, 22 arc minutes of a degree in Aquarius is taking us back in time to a number of different places. And one of them, if we go way back, if we look back at March of, is actually was the 6th of March of 2024. That was the first time that Pluto arrived at this degree. So we've had Pluto going back and forth into Aquarius since March of 2023. But in 2023, it didn't get up to the first degree. It got only into the first half of a degree. Then it went retrograde again back into Capricorn. And then in 2024, it went fully into Aquarius. And it backed up again one last time in the middle of 2024 until November 2024 when it finally moved back into Aquarius to stay. So we've really only had Pluto fully engaging in Aquarius since November 2024. So we're looking at like 11 months or something. I think it was the 19th of November. And by the way, I've done lots of videos on Pluto, including political videos, videos about geopolitics, looking at the United States Sibley chart, for example. If that interests you, they're still relevant. So you can go back in, I think the first time I did it was 2022. I only started uploading things to this channel in 2022. Um, and and then certainly 2023 and 2024. So if you're interested in that, just scroll back in my channel and look for things relevant to Pluto. Because a lot of what is in there is still relevant. It takes 2 years for Pluto to clear a degree fully. And we're still in this process that, as I mentioned, began in March of 2024. So we're now moving beyond this. So Pluto has stationed, it's moving beyond this degree, the first degree, 22 minutes of its sign, but it's already been here for about the last week at this particular degree, and it continues for about a week at this particular degree, and then it only starts to eke its way forward, like 1 arc minute of a degree at a time over several days. So it just really isn't moving at this point. And a lot of planets are very slow at this point, which makes them very powerful. And when a planet turns and moves in direct motion, the last, in Pluto's case, 5 months since the 4th of May are now, they've been digested or thrown in your face, depending, and you've understood something about what needs to happen. And now, as you move forward, you're going to now cover this new territory that you got to up until May of 2025, but that already had implications for you in March of 2024 from the 6th of March. And now we're moving in this direction as we go collectively into the next new thing. We're going to start covering some new territory in the months to come. In 2026, Pluto gets up to 5 degrees, and then it will come back to 3, and so on. So, all of this to say that what you're dealing with right now, you've already known about for quite some time. And often, what Pluto does, whether it's collectively or individually, and definitely and, not just the and or, it shows us the things that we already know are not working, the things that we already know need to change. And either we're too afraid and we haven't taken the steps, and we didn't know which steps to take, or we start discounting our intuition and our inner voice. And this is quite dangerous with Pluto because the more we ignore this momentum for change and this desire to move forward, the more the outer events, as almost like a projection of our unconsciousness, or become so awkward and so uncomfortable and so clearly dysfunctional that they start to crumble the framework that we thought we were working with. Now, this can happen in a marriage, it can happen in a health situation, it can happen in a financial situation, it can happen in a social situation. Certainly, with reference to Pluto in Aquarius, I've said this so many times now, and you'll see it in the videos going past. I'm not one of these astrologers that has this wonderful pie in the sky idea of what Pluto in Aquarius is going to do. It doesn't fix the problems that we're in, it reveals them and brings everything to the surface. And we see it, it oozes out from every crevice. There's no escaping this. And Pluto will show all of the difficulties, the trauma, the challenges that we're facing as a collective. That will be in your collective little community, and that will be nationally, and that will be globally. That will be in a number of different layers of how we come together in and try and meet each other as humans. So this is not going to be a comfortable time. It's going to be a time of loads of opportunity. It's going to be a time of real rapid personal growth and collective growth and change, but it doesn't promise a guaranteed positive outcome. And this is the important thing to understand. We can only adjust that on a personal level and then contribute in a way that is positive around us. That's the only thing that we can do. But we can't sit back and say, oh, thank God, Pluto is now in Aquarius and all the bad guys are going to get knocked down and everything's going to be fantastic. Now, here's an example. As we go over the last few days, there has been a revelation of well, not a yeah, it's a revelation in the UK. We're going to start with the UK. There's a number of different places, but I can't cover all of it. You have no idea how much has to go into geopolitical astrology. It's just a never-ending mass of information, and there has to be a line drawn somewhere. So I'm just going to focus on 3 places right now. So starting with the UK, there's a revelation that Boris, unsurprisingly, I have to say, Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of the UK up until 2023, and even the former Mayor of London, don't know what the Brits ever saw in the guy. He has been revealed through a hack to have received money in payment for putting people who are weapons manufacturers, weapons traders, in touch with Ukrainian authorities. And so he's basically enriched himself to have his friends do business in Ukraine. And it was the same period of time that Boris Johnson went and scuppered the peace deal that was happening in Istanbul that was already paraphed or initialed. And what that means when an agreement is initialed, in this case between Russia and Ukraine, which was late March and early April of 2022, so we're nearly 4 years into this war. And at the very beginning of that war, there was this the pressure to stop the war, uh, where there was a signature or at least an initial on the agreement that would have been extremely favorable to Ukraine, and it would have kept Ukraine neutral, which is going to happen anyway because now Russia has basically won this war. That was clear already last year. The last time, by the way, that Pluto was at this degree, this was already clear. And And what that means is that Boris Johnson went in and told the Ukrainians not to agree to this peace deal. So some of you might remember, if you're interested in these things, that Russia was marching on Kiev at that time. The soldiers were approaching Kiev as well as in the Donbass. And what happened was they came to this agreement, and part of the agreement was that Russia would withdraw its troops. So, in respect of the agreement, honoring the agreement they had just initialed, Russia pulled back its troops from Kiev, and the Western media spun that as if Kiev had pushed them back, and this was a great victory for the West, and don't you see how weak Russia is, and so on. And actually, what it was Russia honoring the agreement that then Zelensky was told to tear up and walk away from. By the time, because I used to work in this domain, and working on agreements, working on treaties, working on whether it be trade agreements or justice agreements, all kinds of, there's so many layers of agreements that countries and organizations have between them. By the time you get to the point that the agreement is parafed or initialed, that paraf just means this, the initial in French. It's another expression. But when the agreement has come that far, it means that there's a solid agreement. You don't put your initials on something until you agree to the content of it. So that's how far things were along. And Boris Johnson, this guy who's now just this weekend being revealed by The Guardian to have taken this money, um, uh, and probably more. This is just, again, with Pluto, you get the tip of the iceberg and then everything else starts to come up. This same person basically turned that on its head. And now, a million dead soldiers later on the Ukrainian side, we are still at war. There is still a war. I can't say we are at war. There is still a war going on. Uh, when I first moved to Brussels in 1991, Boris Johnson was a journalist for the Daily Telegraph, what the Brits call the Torygraph, because it's a conservative, ultra-conservative newspaper. And basically he would lie and lie and lie and lie. And the journalism, so-called journalism that he produced was just scandalous. He lied about the interns at the European Commission. He lied about the goings-on around the Commission. He was there to report on Europe. His father had lived in Brussels for many, many years. He was part of the European project as a Brit when Boris Johnson was growing up. I have no time for this person. He's utterly unserious, but dangerous at the same time. And so the point being that this man is incredibly untrustworthy. He's like the embodiment of perfidious Albion. And this moment in time, this is all coming to a head now. Um, why this matters is because there's so much toxicity around what is going on in the geopolitical background. And when Pluto comes through these points, these sensitive points, and starts to reveal things that have been going on. So this money was apparently transmitted in 2023. And that would have been in late 2023 when Pluto moved back and forth between the 29th degree of Capricorn and this very beginning of Aquarius, where Pluto is stationing now. So this is a place to look at. This is a topic to follow, toxic as it is. So notice these things because this is not just one man who's corrupt. This is a part, it's pointing to the corruption around the war itself. It's pointing to the lies and the corruption that this war with the Ukrainian war has been built on, and that includes NATO. Right, and then the second thing, which is really quite extraordinary, is the Trump last week, the Trump administration had declared that they would raise 100% tariffs on China, which is basically a provocation. It's been seen by China as such. It's seen by many analysts as such. And this provocation turned China to retaliate. Of course, they don't call it a retaliation, but it is basically them. It's almost a checkmate. It's definitely check anyway. Um, where they're now turning it around and saying we will have export restrictions on these export on the products that the US depends on, not just the US, but the Western world. If you want to have a phone, if you want to use a computer, if you want to have a car, any kind of battery, electrical function, anything that functions on rare earth minerals, China has banned it. And China is the main source of many rare earth minerals. So Africa is for sure. By the way, Ukraine is also, not coincidentally. And so these are now being withheld and will be selectively withheld as a trump card, as a way of holding I should keep the chess analogy. It's probably better in this term. So holding the check and perhaps getting checkmate as well. So this is now erupting into a huge scandal. It's an international event. It's an international scandal in the same way that the Boris Johnson scandal is as well, because it implicates Saint Vladimir Zelensky and that crew who was untouchable until the mainstream media couldn't hold that story together anymore. And what we're seeing now is all of these issues coming to a head with all of the cracks that were visible from the beginning starting to explode and really tear the house down, as it were. I want to go back. Now we're talking about the 14th of October. Venus, I will talk about as well. And we're going to talk about the kite again, even though I mentioned it in a previous video, but it's worth looking at again. But what I want to do is go back in time. And I'm just going to, maybe I'll just do it like this. And we're going to go back to April this year. So April the 8th of 2025. And on April the 8th, we had Saturn and Venus conjoined at 25 degrees. And Mercury was with them just a degree and a half or almost 2 degrees away from Venus. And then the North Node was there as well. So I don't know if you remember, that was quite an exciting time. There was an incredible amount of newness. And one of the things, and also to point out, Mercury is in fall. Mercury does not do function well in Pisces in terms of the usual way of working with Mercury. Mercury in Pisces works in ways that are gathering information from a million different places and trying to filter it through, trying to make something coherent. I have Mercury in Pisces. It's not easy, by the way. It's a tough gig. The thing is, I know what I'm getting at. I know exactly what's going on in my head, and the problem is externalizing that. The problem is communicating that. So just to give you an example. So we had Mercury on the North Node with Saturn and Venus, all of them around Rahu, and in a trine to a Mars also in fall. So Mercury is in fall and detriment. Mercury is in double jeopardy in Pisces because it normally rules Virgo and it also is exalted in Virgo. So it gets the opposite treatment in Pisces. And then Mars is the exaltation ruler of Capricorn. And because it exalts in Capricorn when it's in the opposite sign of Cancer, it's in fall. And that's why we had the Mars retrograde. So this is the end of the Mars retrograde phase. And this is the week, let's see, 2 weeks before Mars was opposing Pluto. So this is all part of a bigger story. Interesting just to note, Chiron is at 22 degrees at this point, which is also where Chiron will come back to station in a few weeks. So just keep that in mind as well, because all of these things are coming back in November, where we're going to be seeing the results of what I'm talking about here, that will show some kind of consequences or some results of what we're looking at here. Right. So we get so this is also 1 month before Pluto actually stations. So Pluto is stationing on the 4th of May in 2025. So it's just less than a month from the station. Okay, so keep in mind, here we go. Saturn and Venus are together, 25 degrees. This is also where Saturn will come back on the 28th of November, and it will station direct, but it will be at the 25th degree all through November. It's a long journey. And in fact, where Mars is at this point is where where Jupiter comes up also through November to station retrograde at 25 degrees. So just keep these things in mind. The Mercury is part of this dynamic, especially as it's in a very tight trine here with Mars. And then On this day, so on the April 8th that I'm pointing to here, the Trump administration's Department of Justice said that they were no longer going to be investigating cryptocurrency fraud. They decided, leave it alone, doesn't matter, no big deal. Keep that in mind. What's happened over the weekend is that there has been an absolute chaos because of this Trump 100% tariff on China and China's robust response to that, which has thrown the American market, stock market, and the cryptocurrency market into complete disarray. And in the meantime, so the stock market lost, I don't know how much. The cryptocurrency, Bitcoin lost almost 9% of value, and other cryptocurrencies were completely wiped out. Millions of people, I think it was 109 million people, I wrote it down here somewhere, it's just phenomenal, were wiped out. And 19 billion US dollars of value was wiped out. And this happened on Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th. And so some of you will know that on the 11th, if you watched my latest video or if you're following other astrologers and you saw that, that you will know that on the 11th, that was the day that Venus started opposing Saturn. So basically, Venus has been in opposition to Saturn for a couple of days before this, if we give it an orb of 2 or 3 degrees, and a couple of days after. So Venus is still, as we are looking, in opposition. Venus is also at the degree of the eclipse that we just had on the 21st of September. So this is going to call in a number of events that also were affected by and still affecting us through the eclipse of the 21st of September. Eclipses have a very long arc of impact. So that's something to pay attention to. Right. So you see that this story is calling back something of what I was describing earlier about the 8th of April and the Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Justice decision not to bother with crypto scandals. Don't look at that, especially we won't look at what the U.S. administration has gained because of crypto scandals already. This is what this administration, I think, will be known for, inter alia. But notice that because where previously we had Saturn in conjunction with Venus, now we have the opposition. So these are cycles. We have the planets that come together, then they move into the different radius around the chart. They move into different relationships with each other. This is the opposition of that cycle. And then Venus will come back later and meet up with Saturn in Aries the next time. So this is also the last time that we'll get Venus in opposition to Saturn in Pisces, the Venus in Virgo in her fall, and Saturn retrograding in Pisces. Now, this is very strong. Saturn is strong because not only is it retrograde and very slow at this point, it's less than 2 degrees away from where it's going to station direct, but also it's forming a trine now with Jupiter. And Jupiter itself is exalted and really powerful. And it's also joined by the moon, which is the ruler of the signs. So that adds to the exaltation. And this is part of the story of the ingress of Pluto. Sorry, not the ingress, but the direct station of Pluto and the ingress of Venus, which we'll look at again in a minute. So here we now have Mars with Mercury in Scorpio. This is very strong, strong Mars. It's a Mercury that can be incredibly strong and manipulative. It tends to be secretive and behind the scenes. So it's rare that good things necessarily can come out of this, unless we're talking about somebody's chart where we can say, well, there can be some dynamic around psychology or, professional surgeon or something like that. Although usually in childhood, this is not an easy signature, especially with siblings, for example. But just keep that in mind because earlier we had that Mars that was in Cancer, roughly just 2 or 3 degrees away from, not even 2 degrees away from where Jupiter is now. So these are all new patterns that are forming based on what we already saw in the previous cycle. So we're seeing things coming through bit by bit. Mars was where Jupiter was. Jupiter, remember, was in Gemini still at that point. It hadn't entered into Cancer, which also provides a lot more dignity for Saturn, because when Jupiter was up until the 9th of June, Jupiter was in Gemini, and Saturn itself was uh, in Pisces, ruled by that Jupiter. So a Jupiter not in strong dignity. Let's just see where I'm going to find this Pluto thing. I think I've lost it now. I have to go back and try and find it. I want to try and get the Pluto ingress. Okay. I'm going to come back. Somebody in the comments of a video a couple of days ago mentioned a no King's March, which we're all going to briefly look at. And then later we'll get to the sign by sign. This is all going to be done in chapters that you can find. Where is Pluto? All right, I have to call it open. So you see how complicated these things are, but I'm trying to distill this into something that you'll be able to look at and say, oh, I need to follow this trace. So I can see, here we go, direct station this year. You want to follow these little crumbs and come to an understanding that this moment in time is not a random moment. It's not a moment that is just kind of out of the blue, things are happening. They're all tied into previous, especially with Pluto, previous things that are underhanded. They're not coming from the best place. And one of the reasons we saw that with the North Node conjunction that I showed you on the 8th of April, 2025, Mercury was not in good dignity. Mars was not in good dignity. And as I mentioned, Mercury-Mars stories are rarely positive. It's usually something that's a little nefarious. So that's often, and that's not true of everything. It's true. I'm talking in terms of geopolitics. Okay. So when we're looking at that geopolitically, especially with a very strong Mars dominating Mercury here, and with the Mars and the Mercury being in poor dignity in April, we're looking at things that are not great. They're not great. And also Venus was retrograde at that time on the 8th of April. And Rahu, the North Node, expands everything. It makes everything kind of cloudy and has an effect of confusing things. So this is where we are as we come back to this moment. So today on the 13th, as I'm doing this video, Venus in the next 10 hours or so is going to be moving into Libra. She's moving then into a direct opposition with Neptune. Now, what we're going to find, Venus is in very strong dignity. She's in her own sign. The sun, which is co-present with her, is not in great dignity. It's in its fall because the sun is exalted in Aries. So leaders, sun represents kings and leaders. It's the peoples that are the rulers, so-called rulers of the world. They can include business figures as well, the leaders, the people we look up to. Now here there's something going on in the sense of there's something that is not in integrity here or not entirely clear for two reasons. One is that the Venus is in opposition to this Neptune, having just opposed Saturn. That's part of the cycle we just looked at. The sun is moving into a square with Jupiter, and that can show extravagance, exuberance. It can be wonderfully optimistic, and that Jupiter is in very strong dignity. So one would hope that it can also show wisdom and a sense of that Jupiterian doing the right thing kind of thing. But there's also a square to Chiron and Eris, who are still very tightly conjoined. Now, remember, back on the 9th of October, there was the exact conjunction of Chiron and Eris, and I did a video about that. That was my most recent one, where you'll find a lot of all of what I'm discussing here in more specific reference to the Chiron Eris. And remember from that video, for those who watched it, that one of the things that came through was scandal, the scandal brewing of the Watergate scandal of the Nixon administration. Equally, the Nixon administration, having devalued the US dollar, which is what just happened over this past weekend, markets crashing, the dollar is devaluing, US credibility down the toilet, and this is what was happening in 1971, 72 in the Nixon administration. so I'm looking at these tie-ins in terms of the Eris and Chiron conjunction as well. Now, the square is also encompassing the moon, in this case, almost exact again. At the time that this is the direct station, this is the moment of the direct station, the moon is very, very tightly squaring Eris and Chiron. The moon is the people in mundane astrology. The moon represents the public mood, and here we see that this public mood is fragile. There is a sense of a need for justice. We want things to be done the right way. This is with the Jupiter, but there's also an excessive emotionality. When Moon and Jupiter come together, there can be a real strong emotionality, and this is in the sign of emotions. This is in the sign of the Moon. So that's guaranteed. And the flashpoint here is the Chiron Eris, the pointing out hypocrisy, the pointing out the intolerable, and seeing that. And now the sun is caught in this square. So if we extrapolate away from all of that, pardon me, and we come into this kite, we see Venus very, very strong. This is our little blessing here. And she's trining Pluto. She's building to a trine with Pluto, trining Uranus, which is retrograding now, and by the 7th of November, we'll move back into Taurus, which I'll do a separate video on. And this opposition to Neptune is like the apex of this. And that creates an air grand trine, which creates a very fast flow of information, a fast flow of connection. We could even say of markets, because we're talking Gemini, Aquarius, Libra, all of which have to do with the human exchanges of all kinds, the ways that we interact, including electronically. It's about finance, it's about commerce, it's about all of the different ways that we exchange information and so on. And so we do see that there's a free flow of this, but what is the flow? So we've seen there's been corruption around this whole scandal of the cryptocurrency that leads back to the current US administration, and that somebody tied to the administration has opened up a cryptocurrency account. On the day that all of this exploded, they took advantage of the markets rising and then crashing and then closed the account, and they had a gain of hundreds of millions as a result. That is, this is this is the Watergate of this moment. There are many Watergates. I just described a couple of them. The corruption is off the charts. We are in Kali Yuga. I don't care if this is the ending of it next, I don't know, 3 months ago or 3 decades from now. It doesn't matter. We're still in it. This is Kali Yuga, where there is corruption. There's a lack of understanding. There's ignorance. There's an unreliability that is inherent to these times. And so the more we have, for all those reasons, we have to come closer and closer to our own integrity, our own sense of self. So the plutocrats, I think I was mentioning with the study, the Princeton study that said U.S. is a plutocracy. The U.S. is run by plutocrats. That's already years ago that they were saying that was evident, especially when in 2010, when the U.S. Declared that companies could be seen as people. I think that was the Pluto and Capricorn era where everything started to fall apart from the collective point of view. And now we're experiencing the remnants of that and going through the revision of how we come together. This particular moment is going to be a defining moment that goes forward into 2026, because we get these trines again between Pluto and Uranus all the way through this period of time into 2026. And then the mini grand trine, which is with Neptune and Saturn built in. Now, every time a planet comes to 0 degrees, the first degree of Libra, in this case, Venus, so far the most powerful, because she's in her own sign, it triggers what we call a kite. And this kite is showing us something of a way out, or showing us something of a way through the situation. But we've got the situation again is still not clear. It's not yet ripe for things to go forward fully. And I think we still have to wait until 2026 for things to really move in the direction of the next new thing. And I think a part of this is that the United States itself is falling by the wayside internationally, has been discredited in so many ways, as well as financially weakened, militarily definitely weakened. Um, and we're seeing now this is the rise of China. So China has, I think, I just pull that chart up here, see if I can find that. Um, I think it's got it's a 3-degree moon, I think, for China in Aquarius. Um, no, I can't find it. I lost a lot of my charts last year. It was a very strange event that kind of a computer fluke when I changed computers and I lost, I don't know how many thousands of astrology charts. It was a bit discouraging to say the least. I took it also as a sign that I needed to stop doing the geopolitical stuff. So maybe this is also this is also one of those. I'm not seeing it, but I do think that China has a 3-degree Aquarius moon, which was affected earlier this year as Pluto got to that point and is um, is coming back in the next couple of months as Pluto moves direct again. Now, there's a lot going on in terms of the Middle East as well, all in this. I mentioned in my previous video, and you can watch that there, so I won't dwell on that here, that the so-called peace agreement is not one. It's not something that is actually um, going to hold. There's no substance to the agreement, and there's nothing offered to the victims of the genocide. There's nothing offered to reinstate a society or anything. There's nothing into this agreement. It's just, for the moment, less fighting, pause in fighting. Um, which is welcome, but it's insufficient. And there is some movement in terms of humanitarian concern. So that's already something. But so this moment in time, just to sort of wrap this up, is a glimmer of hope that does show that there's something that is changing. It's just that it's not yet clear. We're not into the new thing. We're clearing the dross, if you like, of the certainly the last couple of years and of the many centuries, a 250-year cycle of Pluto. We're shifting things in a really huge way right now. Um, and on a personal level, you will be feeling this particularly strongly if you have anything in the first, let's say, 4 degrees of Aquarius for sure. And any of the fixed signs, meaning that that's Aquarius and then Taurus, Leo, and then Scorpio. So if you have that natally, you will be really, really feeling this. But because we also have Neptune at the 1st degree of Aries and then Uranus at the 1st degree of Gemini and Venus at the 1st degree of Libra, we also will have quite a strong impact for virtually everybody, anyone who has the first 2 or 3 degrees of pretty much any sign because of the impact of this. The other degrees that are really, really strongly impacting things right now are 22, um, let's say the last decan of Cancer, Pisces, Libra, Aries. So those are also incredibly strongly influenced right now. Um, I mean, we're all in it. This is what I'm trying to get to. Why I mention these geopolitical things is because we are all impacted by this. And then in our individual life, things will manifest in the way that they need to for our, our personal growth, our karmic, expansion and growth. Um, Pluto is it's a force for bringing to the surface all that is dysfunctional, things that are not right, things that are not working for us, things that are not in alignment with what is divine, you could say divine, or what the South Asian or the Indian philosophy would call the dharma. The dharma is what is correct living. It's living in harmony and alignment with the world, with the forces of life, life-giving forces, life-sustaining forces, and living in harmony with that is really what makes us feel secure and natural and healthy and happy. And when we're not in harmony with that, we start to contract and we become more stingy and we become less loving and we become less cooperative. And this is what's happening right now. There's this opposition of forces that are trying to get by in a harmonious way, trying to move into harmony, trying to live simply, just as a natural human being. And then there are other forces which are trying to control all of that. And that's, again, another Pluto keyword, control, trying to control from the top down. Now, we do that individually as well. So Pluto in our natal chart and in aspect to certain planets will also show us where we control things or where we are feeling under the control of others if we're not living through our own empowerment. And it's really about finding an internal sense of strength. I did a video again, maybe beginning of 2023. It was a video for all signs. Pluto moving into Aquarius, all signs. So it's almost 3 years ago I did that. But it's still relevant. So look for that if you haven't seen it. And the introduction to that describes a lot about how we can work with Pluto. And I even separated that out as another video, a separate video. I think I gave it that title, How to Work with Pluto in Aquarius, or with Pluto transits. And these are times where we're really going to feel many, many times that our backs are up against the wall, that we don't have options. You know, the Pluto in Aquarius, like I said so many times, for me does not represent the love and harmony and so on that was the image of Pluto in Aquarius, that the sort of flower power movement had, or that many, many New Age astrologers have. It's things are just not that straightforward, not that easy. So you want to understand that we have to go through the dissolution and the crunchiness and the difficulty of Pluto before we can clear away what's not right. And then you get to the point where you're then moving in the new direction. And often what can happen is you'll feel, ideally, you're listening from the inside out, that you're getting this message. This is the right thing to do. This is correct. You instinctively know that. Even little children know what is the right thing to do. And you just keep that faith, the inner faith, that this is the right thing to do, and you keep going in that direction. And however difficult it is, the more you're connected to that conviction that I'm doing what is correct, I'm doing what's right, I'm doing what is dharmic, what is good for me and good for many people around me, then you come to this place where, however difficult things are, you can ride through it. You ride through it because you know that this is what has to be. And then Pluto allows you to feel that courage. You overcome the fear, another Pluto keyword. You overcome this inner obstacle, which is actually your own fear of losing control or a fear of things not going your way, the egoic way. And you realize, no, I just have to keep going. And you overcome that. You realize things are even better than I thought they could be because I overcame this fear and this grasping and this clinging on. It's like this, it's the phoenix rising from the ashes. You know, if we take Pluto as the modern ruler of Scorpio, one of the ancient traditional images of Scorpio was a phoenix. So we had the scorpion and then the eagle and then the phoenix, and more esoteric way of looking at Scorpio. So keep that in mind. This is we're in a phoenix kind of rising from the ashes moment, but we're not yet out of the ashes. Okay, so we're seeing the ashes now falling all around us. Um, Pluto is also out of bounds, and it was out of bounds from the 29th or 30th of August, and it still is out of bounds until just before Saturn will station direct, and that's about the 23rd, 24th of November. By the way, Saturn is the ruler of Pluto. Sorry, Pluto is in Aquarius, it is the ruler of Pluto. And that means that we need to pay attention to where Saturn is. That has been the case since 2008 when Pluto moved into Capricorn. So we're used to this. There's a heaviness about these times. There's a restriction. This is Saturn. There's a seriousness about it. There's a material transformation, which is Saturn, that is involved in this Plutonian interference or this Plutonian change, shaking up everything. And currently, Saturn is ruled by a very dignified Jupiter. We've not had this quality of the Saturn. So, because Jupiter only moved into Cancer on the 9th of June, Saturn had moved into Aries on the 30th of May, 25th of May. So we didn't have Saturn ruled by Jupiter before this moment. So from the 1st of September, Saturn has been back in Pisces, and it will stay there until the 14th of February, 2026. So while we have this, and while Jupiter is in strong, strong dignity, we have a better use, let's say, of this Pluto than we've had up until this point. And the trine, the grand air trine, and the kite, and the imagination and the capacity to see what needs to be let go, what needs to dissolve, what needs to be surrendered, all of this is working in our favor at this time. So we even have, on the direct station, which is kind of an imprint chart. It's almost like a natal chart. It's just the event, let's say, the event chart of the direct station of Pluto, which is for the first time completing its full ingress plus retrograde station within Aquarius. It's not going back to Capricorn. It's now, this is it. This is what we get now. And it's very favorable, but there's still some road bumps here, some speed bumps. We've got the Mars Mercury that we need to get through, which can be about anger. It can be about how to, grapple with this anger and frustration. Mars and Mercury will come together on the 18th, 19th in Scorpio, 18th, 19th of October, which might be a good time to segue into this event that I didn't really know about, but somebody pointed it out to me. I think this had happened already a few months ago. These No Kings marches, and this is in the United States. So again, this is US stuff. This is not my political stuff. Somebody asked me to look at this, and I did, and I think it's interesting. And just take the information, and you don't need to worry about my political beliefs or otherwise. I'm actually quite a political agnostic because they're all trash, basically. And everybody that you worship, they're all trash. Forget them all. Anyway, point being that this is a very interesting day to be having a march that is against or opposed to tyranny. And I think this is the emphasis of the march, the self-declared purpose of the marches, which apparently will be all through the United States. I've just put this for Washington, since that's where the capital is of the US government. This is where the people who are motivated to do so will be coming together to protest the increasingly dogmatic, increasingly tyrannical, authoritarian government that is there in the current administration, which, by the way, is not unique to this administration. It's that now Pluto, especially, has revealed the true nature of this. So this was already going on. This has been going on for a long, long time. So it's not about one man. It's not about one person or one administration. You really have to understand how the change that we require globally is systemic. So you have to drop this notion that it's about this bad guy or this good guy. It's systemic. This is corruption that runs really, really deep. And this is what is so painful about this moment and so potentially auspicious also about this moment. So this No King's March is happening. I've just given it an 11 a.m. start time because often these things tend towards like the end of the morning. So I don't know, maybe it's noon, maybe it's 1, doesn't really matter. The one thing that would change would be the degree of the ascendant midheaven and then the degree of the moon. But at 11 a.m., let's imagine everybody's assembling and the moon is on the midheaven, so to within 1.5 degrees or so. And this is really significant because that represents the people. And this is a moon in Virgo, which is inherently dissatisfied. And it's a moon in Virgo ruled by a Mercury, which is with Mars, which is pissed off. So this is like literally describing what this event is all about. And of course, the midheaven describes in this case, the government. This is the 10th house. So it has an ascendant, much like the U.S. chart. The ascendant in the US Sibley chart is 12 degrees of Sagittarius. This is 8 degrees of Sagittarius. And also, Neptune in the US chart is in the 10th house, again, showing that you don't see your government clearly. You don't see your rulers clearly. The 10th house is the image of the government or the person in power, the head of the government. And Neptune is all about the Hollywood glitz and glamour, the propaganda, and the way that you are told to see things, and then that will show that there's been some disappointment, deception, something is not clear about how you're seeing things. And particularly with reference to mundane astrology, for those of you who are interested in learning these things, you always have to look more towards the negative spin of the indicators in the chart rather than the constructive positive one, simply because it's the nature of collective life that things will tend to gravitate towards the more challenging aspects than in an individual chart where we can individually choose to make use of things in a very directed and constructive way. It's much more challenging to do so collectively. So that's the big distinction between natal chart reading and a world or a mundane chart reading. Now, what's happening here is, again, this notion of the Jupiter in a square to the sun, still very, very strong. And then the moon, of course, being on the midheaven, but also the moon is with the south node. South node in the 10th house with reference to a need to change this way of being governed, a need to change this person or this administration. This is about a loss of leadership. Again, the sun itself is not in strong dignity here. And it's when the sun is in fall, if we're thinking of this in terms of the leaders, the rulers, the person, the famous person, or the person we're admiring, they are struggling. There's a struggle there. This is not a strong. This is when the sun is, furthest from the earth. It's very weak. It's not like the sun in Aries, which is very strong and exalted, and it's in opposition to this Chiron Eris. And again, remember, go back if you haven't seen it yet to the video I did, where there's so many things that are parallel in this moment to what was going on in the early 70s, the last time Chiron Eris were together, and which really talked a lot about these corruption scandals and issues around the Vietnam War, issues around revelations around things that were undesirable, to say the least, and toxic. So now we have a very strong T-square here. We can see that with this red triangle is painting this T-square, which is an opposition between the Sun Chiron Eris and the two squares that are the Sun squaring Jupiter and the Chiron Eris squaring Jupiter, particularly Chiron. And so that's tension. And the tension needs to be resolved. The tension needs to find a resolution. Part of the resolution is to work with that Jupiter, but also to work with the empty space in the opposite to balance that out, to balance the T-square. We need something of the Capricorn element, which is the structure, the balance in the structure. And here we find this represented by Saturn. Now we have Saturn on the IC. So Saturn on the IC, the fourth house of the chart is the land. It's the homeland, you could call it, of a people. That's where the North Node is. It's about the lineage or what the people feel they've inherited through this country, this nation. And that's, again, this reference to taking on this need for restructuring. Now we're coming back to something we've already seen, right? Especially, again, if we go back to simply April and observe that Saturn is now coming back to that point. It's very close to that point. And it will be basically between now and the end of November or even beginning of December. It's going to be hovering around that point. It takes a long time for outer planets to slow and turn around. It's like a big steamship. It takes ages for a big steamship to turn around. my steamship, I'm showing my age, cruise ship, whatever, a big boat. It takes a long time. And so again, we still have built into this trine that is just here with us in most of 2025, 2026. This is the big theme. It's the Pluto and Uranus in this big trine that is quite supportive of change. But again, change is difficult, right? If you get a tooth extracted, that's a change. Growing pains, that shows change. And it's not easy. People tend not to like change. And the thing is that we need to become accustomed to that in this era because that's what we get. Our inner strength is part of this, going through that. That's Pluto as well. When we feel this inner courage and inner strength, as I described earlier, this is how we work through the change. Um, and the other thing that I wanted to point out in terms of this March is that the Neptune now is separating from the Venus. So the rather Venus is separating from the opposition with Neptune. It's still active, but it's weak. And it's almost like you can say the disillusion or the illusion or the romance has been seen. It's been the perception of it is there. I get it now. I see that. And now what we're having instead is that where Venus was opposite Saturn, we're getting the moon to come up and oppose Saturn. And that is where we feel like now we don't connect. There's an opposition here between moon and Saturn that says, and it's a moon that is dissatisfied. This is a moon that does not feel that it has what it wants in Virgo. And and it looks for the better thing. It looks for the thing that it needs now. And that in opposition to Saturn is saying, "No, we're standing on our own. We're taking action now on our own." I think it's really, really interesting how this all is panning out, especially because the US Neptune is here around 22 degrees of Virgo. And then finally, perhaps to end up, the Jupiter is on the Mercury retrograde of the US Sibley chart. And maybe I should call in this Sibley chart just so we can see, then you can see that better. Um, Mercury retrograde, I'll put it in the center, and the No King's March, which is basically a transit chart for the 18th of October, is on the outside. So we have Jupiter on Mercury. And it is almost exact to the degree. This is a partile conjunction to within 2 arc minutes of a degree. And Mercury in the US chart is in the eighth house and retrograde. So again, that's a little bit of the sneakiness, the unreliability in terms of commitments, treaties, agreements, and so on. But this is phenomenal because of this closeness of this Jupiter and the fact that Jupiter itself is also in a sextile to the midheaven. The moon is approaching a sextile to this Jupiter that it rules. And that Jupiter is also, remember, approaching this trine to the Saturn. And it just creates an atmosphere of things being revealed, things being spoken about, things being expressed, let's say. Venus is in a square to the Jupiter in the US chart, again, to within 3 arc minutes of a degree. These are incredibly tight orbs for transits. And that really perks me up. When I see that, you have to pay attention to that. So Venus squaring Jupiter, again, can be coming through this sense of extravagance, too much. It's over the top. But it can also mean that the marchers, and here we have Venus squaring Venus, are not necessarily seeing clearly. This is also the moon on Neptune. That would be the one downfall, that there is a high idealism, that there is a lack of clarity of purpose, or a lack of coherence within the group itself. And this would be the one drawback. And here I would like to point out then the Mercury Mars conjoining. That's the next day and the day after. They will perfect that conjunction, but it's essentially a Mercury Mars conjunction, really strong Mars here. And that is in the 12th house. It's sneaky, something underhanded in the house of the hidden enemy. So again, if we think back to 1971, 1972, one of the issues that came up in that time was this COINTELPRO, which was the revelation that the United States was spying on its own people. And again, that had been going on, but it was revealed, right? We're talking about things coming to awareness, and that's what we're experiencing now. And when we're coming back now to rhyme this moment in time with this, we have this dynamic of Mercury and Mars in the 12th house hidden, with Jupiter highlighting this Mercury retrograde sneaky in the 8th house. That is also, by the way, also connected to trade agreements and what money is shared and what is taken from others and absorbed um, to the benefit of the US from others. And and that would be, for me, a red flag that would suggest beware of FBI interference, because this is, again, the FBI was spying on the United States people, citizens, and beware of what are called agents provocateurs, people who get involved in events as if they are participating, but they're actually there to be shit disturbers. This, for me, is a signature of an agent provocateur. And I do believe also, as we go forward in time, now I'm going to just come away from Sibley here. I'm going to come away from this March, and we're just going to go forward in time to October, sorry, November. We're already in October, we're going into November. And on the 11th, 12th of November, we have another really interesting event, which is that Mercury and Mars are conjoined. So the 11th, 12th is a really significant day. We have Saturn at exactly the same degree to the minute of the Saturn on the 8th of April, where the United States administration said, we're not going to investigate corruption. We're not going to investigate any kind of dealings with the cryptocurrency market. We don't care. It's open. You do what you like, as you like. And this is where I would suggest there can be something to pay attention to around finances. Now we have a trine. Jupiter is in the 8th house in this dynamic here. So I'm just calling in a random time here. This is 9 a.m. Universal Time, roughly, but just as a descriptor, because this follows the US chart, and I think that's quite significant. We have the Mercury Mars now in the first house of the US chart. The Jupiter is retrograding now back over the Mercury that it's been sitting on, the US Mercury. And then the Saturn is exact to the minute to where it was on the 8th of April when it was with a retrograde Venus, a Mercury in fall and detriment, and the North Node at 27 degrees of Pisces. So there's something here that's going to tie in to the fact that things have been cut loose, that things are allowed to happen, and this can provoke some serious, I suspect, false flag event or financial crash or financial event, but it's not what things appear to be. It will not be what things seem to be. And this, I think we need to pay attention to in a general sense. If I come back to that, hang on just a moment, let's come back and find that chart for the, oh darn, now I've got to go back and find this chart that I just had that didn't come back up. What did we call that now? No kings. All right, so we're looking for no kings. So the No King's March, oh, there we go. The No King's March is that this is the 18th again, coming back to the 18th. Oh, wait, sorry. We want to come back to the US chart. There we are. Okay, so now we've got the No King's chart on the outside, the US chart on the inside. And I want to point out again, this is the last thing that I'll say about this. Then we'll go into the sign by sign. And that is that the descendant of the No King's March, so on the day the ascendant is at 8 degrees 20, the descendant is within less than a degree of a conjunction to the United States Uranus. Pardon me. And that also, for me, signals that something unusual is going to happen that's going to be triggered in the both in terms of the march itself, in terms of the people or the reaction. These are the perpetrators. These are the ones that are being reacted to, or the ones that are receiving the dynamic. This is where the US has its difficulties and instabilities in international relations. The seventh house is the trading partners, the others. Um, that's why they only have frenemies. They don't have friends. It's just war. That's the language of the relationships that the U.S. has, inconsistency and war. And so here we had, this is not about Americans. This is not about you. This is not personal to you. This is how the United States behaves in the world at large. And this is being revealed. This is after the U.S. Pluto return, and even the return of the Pluto that has had the progressed Pluto, which is 29 degrees Capricorn. This Pluto return has revealed to the world how the United States operates, and this is why there's such a lot of pushback. And this is where it starts to get a little uncomfortable for people who thought that they were the good guys. It becomes very uncomfortable. So, all the more reason to really work on yourself, brace yourself, be open to new information. Better to be forewarned so you can be forearmed. But this will cause some kind of disruption, I think, that can push back on people that may, especially because of the Mars and the Mercury there, cause some disruption that may even be lethal or dead, some deadly thing. It's in a trine to the North Node in the fourth house. There can be situations like the army, military, or whatever getting involved, again, much like the era of 71, 72, 73. And I don't wish that on anyone, obviously, but it's worth paying attention. These are the times that we live in where things are not as they appear, and it's not also sufficient to go marching in the streets because the real culprit, the real challenge is the the power of these technocrats, the tech bros, the technocracy that we live in, which I have been warning about and talking about for the last 2+ years, nearly 3 years, with reference to Pluto going into Aquarius. We are in a battle that is a spiritual war that is going on with reference to our the transhuman agenda and the people who just simply are happy to be humans and live in a beautiful, harmonious way with the planet that breathes and lives with us. So, just to point out, the last time that Pluto was at that point, and this is the last geographical, the geopolitical thing I want to talk about, in terms of the Pluto ingress, sorry, the Pluto direct station, it's not an ingress, it's Venus that ingress into her sign. And so in terms of the Pluto direct station, when the last time that Pluto was at this degree point, which was 6, 7, 8 March 2024, so we're looking at a year and a half ago, something to pay attention to in terms of synchronicities coming through again is that Sweden joined NATO. No small thing. Again, these are things that happen in ways that have long-term knock-on effects when we're talking about the outer planets, especially in the early degrees of their sign. And Sweden sacrificed 200 years of official neutrality to join NATO. And although Sweden, unofficially has been working with the US and NATO for decades, it's not new. But still, to render that official is really choosing a side, and that actually is regretted by a number of Swedes. They didn't actually get a vote in that. So that again is something that happened, that Sweden, the government decided to join NATO. It actually puts the Swedes at enormous vulnerability because once you join NATO, that means that when I worked at NATO, there were 16 member states. Today, I think they're up to 34 or more. I think it's even more. And what that represents is any time there's a so-called war or a threat to one member, all members, this is what's called Article 5, the treaty, NATO Treaty Article 5, means that all NATO countries have to run to the defense of that country under attack. Now, it's one thing if you're one of 16, and it's a completely different ballgame if you're one of 35, many of whom are directly bordering Russia, who you've been provoking for the last 30 years. So Sweden is definitely at a disadvantage with this change, and I think there will be something in the news that will be worth paying attention to If you're Swedish and you're following these things, let me know in the comments what's going on. I don't have time to go step by step through each country. Also, for my friends in Burkina Faso, I have taken note of the question, and I'll see if I can have a look. But the thing is, I have to go back and understand it. I'm not an expert on Africa at all, so I don't know much about the African political scene, and I have to have a look. Um, The other thing that was going on, 6, 7, 8 March 2024, when Pluto was at this same degree for the first time, is that the Pentagon concluded, they published a study that they said concluded that UFO sightings throughout the decades did not prove aliens or extraterrestrial intelligence existed. I'm just going to leave that there. I'm not really into all of these alien things. I don't know much about all of that stuff. I have no direct experience with any of it. I'm agnostic on it, but it might be of interest. And if you are following that carefully, then you can let me know in the comments what all that might mean today. Um, I just want to check my notes in case I'm forgetting something because there's so many different details here. And so, just as a personal note, go back. You can already go back to when Pluto ingressed on the 23rd of March, 2023, and see how life is evolving till this point, and really dig deep and say, okay, I need to change this. This is the thing I know I need to change. And of course, we'll go sign by sign, and then I'll remind you where that's happening in your chart. But to be honest, you don't need me to say that because you already know that. It's in your gut. Your gut is trying to tell you. Now it's the question as Pluto moves forward, how are we going to take action on this? Now Pluto is going to move forward for 7 months and we're going to make progress through what we've already had to grapple with. It will be wrapping up all of that stuff. We're moving beyond these degrees now, moving into a new story, moving into something different. If you have planets or placements in 2 degrees of an orb, this will be huge. Let me just try. I wrote something out about this yesterday. And I want to give you a number of degrees for those of you who have Pluto in other signs, because this will be interesting. I can't go in terms of a natal chart without seeing your actual chart. So I can't do every single planet because that won't even be useful. It means there's so much other stuff that's involved, but we can go within the movement of Pluto vis-a-vis your natal Pluto, and we'll have a look at that. So if you look within a 2 degree orb, there will be something compelling, something showing up right now in this experience of your life. You can expand that orb much, much wider, 4, 5, 6 degrees, even 10 degrees, especially if you're approaching the degree. Separating, you've already been there. But if it's an approaching degree and you're coming up, let's imagine, if you have something at, say, I don't know, 8 degrees of Aquarius or the other signs, then you will probably start to feel an inkling of something. But to actually realize the results, to really have radical change, it's most likely going to be within 2 degrees. So if you have and the fact that Pluto is out of bounds makes this particular moment in time really intense. This out of bounds nature of Pluto continues for 10 more years, and it's for a couple of months, no more than a couple of months, for several months in the second half of every year, coming up for 10 years. I'm just going to pause here and get a drink. Okay, here we go. I'm back and I've made myself a masala chai, so that's better. Hopefully, will not be coughing. And Sagittarius always gets me coughing, so hopefully, we can make it through without coughing for Sagittarius. Speaking of which, if you were born when Pluto was in Sagittarius, that means you were born around somewhere around January to March 1995 or November 1995 till November 1996. If that's you, you will be having a sextile. Pluto is sextiling your natal Pluto. And what that means is that you're in a flow of transition, but you need to take action. So there's something that maybe I could change that. It should probably change, or, but you will need to take action. It's not going to necessarily be easy for you it won't just kind of happen on its own. So there's something that you need to engage with if you really want to make a change. And you can think about that yourself in terms of your life, but also in terms of collectively, what do you want to see change? You have to engage. as we all do, but this is particularly strong for those dates. I'll put these dates below as well. So if you were born when Pluto was in Scorpio, and if your natal birth, if your birthday is around November 1983 until April 1984, or September through December 1984, or April to July 1985, this is particularly intense for you. You're having a square. Pluto is squaring your natal Pluto. Now, this is not news. This is true basically since last year. It's just that I'm announcing this in terms of the direct motion because now you are in the final throes, let's say, of that square, and it's time now to realign yourself based on what this challenge was for you over the last year and a half or so. So you're moving into something that has to change. The change may be happening in a way that seems to be external. It could be anything. It could be, your industry shuts down and now you need to retool, or you have to find new skills and do retraining or something, whatever it is, it's requiring you to make a huge adjustment. It's changing your life. And you're in the middle of that right now. And if you're born when Pluto was in Libra, that also implies that you have a part of this Eris and Chiron conjunction for some of you that will be quite strong for some and a little bit weakened for others. But if you have Pluto in Libra and you were born in the early degrees of Libra, you're born October 1971 to March 1972, or August through October 1972, or April to August 1973, then you have a trine. So you're having Pluto trining Pluto, and Venus, as we're looking at today, is also affecting you. So there's something in a trine that feels like I'm ready to do this thing. I'm ready to make this change. I'm ready to grow in this new personal direction. And for you, your whole generation is about challenges within relationships. It's challenges within what is fair and harmonious, challenges in keeping the couple together or in finding the couple to make things happen. And so with Venus moving in there right now, this is a really lovely opportunity for you to find more harmony in that direction. So if you were born with Pluto in Virgo, but in the early stages of Virgo, that means that you are born from mid-1958 till mid-1959. And by the way, that also means that your Pluto natally is receiving a square from Uranus. So if you're mid 58 to mid 59, you're going through an enormous change. I've seen a couple of you even just this week. The change in the life, the activities, the external structures, the career, all of this is just huge change, all in one go. And of course, that depends on your natal chart, but it's, let's say, at least the background is going to be huge change for you. This creates a quincunx, or what's called an inconjunct, from your Pluto to the transiting Pluto now that is stationing in the beginning of Aquarius. And that requires a certain amount of adjustment. It's uncomfortable. It feels like things are a little bit kind of, it's just uncomfortable enough that you know it's no longer good this way. It may not be yet clear what the next thing should be, but this is what the process of the next few months is going to be showing you, elaborating over the next 7 or so months. And then with the square from Uranus, which continues into next year, it's going to be things that are very new. So that's very unique to the early Virgo Pluto. And then if you were born when Pluto was in Leo, your natal Pluto is in an opposition to transiting Pluto. And that means that there's quite a lot of tension for change. There's quite a lot of structures that you became familiar with or that you had seen that you wanted to create, or the things that you wanted to experience that are being changed and transformed in quite a radical way with the opposition. That's for people who are born around August 1938 to January 1939. Notice these dates historically as well. And from June 1939 to September 1940, again, the beginning of the Second World War, and from January to July 1941. So that is the opposition of Pluto in Leo from Pluto today. And again, this is holding for this year and next year. It's just that it's because of this station direct that we're going to see specific things impacting going forward. If we take that collectively, we can see that this moment in time, and I've done other videos about this already when Pluto first ingressed Aquarius, about all of the institutions that developed around the war and all of the impacts of the Second World War. It's all crumbling now in terms of, for example, the US became a global dominant power because of the Second World War. It was already quite powerful after the First World War, but the Second World War really sealed the deal and made the dollar extremely powerful. And I talked about that even in terms of the Chiron-Eris conjunction, which is when the gold standard was dropped under the Nixon administration, which had been established in 1944 at the Bretton Woods agreement in Bretton Woods, where the leaders met to basically figure out what to do with the new world economy. And so we're in this period of time where all of this is disintegrating. It's all changing. And on a personal level, that will feel very different, and it will depend on where this is in your natal chart. But those are important dates for you to pay attention to. I'll include that down below this video, where you'll find all the other information about me and about the timings of the different things that we're talking about in this session. All right, and then one other thing that I forgot to mention, in terms of the Pluto in Aquarius, and in terms of the tech bro thing that's coming up, this technocracy, is that, and this can really, we can kind of trace it back, even those 248-ish years that Pluto first went into Aquarius back then. And even 500 years ago, if we take the two cycles back, we're seeing, and 500 years, by the way, is also roughly the time it takes for Eris to move around the chart. So this is the same kind of energy of about 500-ish years ago. Pluto in Aquarius, Eris in Aries. And those days, much of the world was governed by what we could call a fiefdom, or like a small city-state. You know, you had Venice, you had Florence, Bruges, Ghent. All of these places were like city-states. They were self-contained, and they had their own regents, and they had their own, governors or whatever. Throughout India, it was the same. You had the Raja of different areas, different regions, and all of that broke down quite rapidly over the last 100 years, but already started to break down the last time Pluto went into Aquarius, and that started to shift towards the nation state. And I talked about that, about Neptune going into Aries. So if you want to hear more about that, go back to my recent video, or whenever I did that video. Maybe it was March or February or something like that, when Neptune first ingressed into Aries. And I talked about that historical trend away from that sort of disparate way of organizing things and towards what can be described as a nation state. And now we're in a phase of dissolving a lot of that. And lo and behold, all of these tech bros and these technocrats that are really basically the ones controlling, including governments, controlling the markets, controlling governments, controlling the human population and how people are able to move about or use their money, etc. Um, and all of these things like digital ID, digital currency, all of these different plans that have been in the works for many, many years. You can see India is one example. For the last 10 or 11 years, it's already been happening there. China, same thing. And what is the intention is that these, what the UN calls 15-minute cities, and what the tech bros are calling, or the Silicon Valley types are calling these kind of dysregulated city states, where they want to have people operating under a certain condition, certain rules, certain legislation that does not represent the legislation of the country that they're in, that is different from the legislation of the country that they're in, which ties into what I was saying earlier about the dysregulation, or now the disbanding of this unit that was of the Department of Justice, that was supposed to be looking into crypto fraud, I think that was established when Sam Bankman-Fried blew up cryptocurrency markets in the end of 2022, which I did videos about at that time with reference to him, Sam Bankman-Fried. I think I did two of those. Anyway, again, this is all tying in together with where we are today, because this is where the direction seems to be going, which is we end up in these pockets, these new communities, and this is Pluto in Aquarius, these new communities which will be locally regulated. Now, that can be lovely. It can look like a hippie commune where everybody is getting along and growing beautiful food together and in harmony. Um, and it can look like a nightmare. It can be an Orwellian scenario where people are hyper controlled, where you don't really have a lot of options, and everything is given to you. It's handed to you. And so this is what is the stated intention of many of these people who are these in their isolated bubble, these billionaires, these plutocrats, which are trying to reestablish something socially, to have places of control that are beyond the reach of national governments, beyond the reach of transnational governments, except that a lot of it has to do with transnational organizations. Oh my God. So this is the world we live in. And we need to come back to our physical body, take a breath, feel your feet, feel the base of your body, feel your back and the crown of your head. Take a lovely deep breath. Exhale. You are here. You are here with me now. We're listening to the sign by sign. And I'm going to start with Aries. So let's just back this up a little bit. And we'll have Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Do listen to all of those because they will tell you different aspects of yourself. And that is described also underneath the video, so I won't go back through that. I'm just going to take away a couple of things here to make it a little cleaner for our journey through here. All right, so for Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, you are, of course, very, very much highlighted at this time because of the Neptune, Chiron, and Eris in your first house. But for you, Pluto is moving direct in your 11th house. Now, notice that it's retrograde, but it's just hours before it's stationing direct. So this is Pluto moving now forward into new degrees into your 11th house. So what you have understood over the last 18 months around your friends, around social groups, around the people that you want to bond with or that you have projects with, or your vision for the future. All of those different things have transformed dramatically. One question would be like, which dream blew up basically over the last year and a half? Which friend or friends group blew up over the last year and a half? Where did things just seem to either dissolve or fall apart? But in a way, it's not that you're disappointed by that. In so many ways, it felt like, yeah, that's just not it anymore. And this is the power of Pluto, where it's just so evident. It's a non-negotiable change. And again, it can be also related to the gains of, income from what you do, money that you earn from your career, for example, or gains that come to you in other ways. Things that are provided to you by people who support you and so on. You might find that you are moving in circles with really powerful people, and that the people around you, the people in your life, the ones that you spend time with, and just in general, society has an incredibly transformational impact on your life as well. So this is a really important time for you to think ahead, really release all of the things that for the last year and a half have been evidently not functioning, and especially for the last 5 months of the retrograde have made you realize, okay, I can't grapple with this anymore. This isn't working anymore. I'm I'm having to admit whatever this change is, allow it, and now move in this new direction that is more compelling. All right, so your ruler Mars is coming up to a conjunction with Mercury in your eighth house. So there's something here that might have to do with finances. It might have to do with a relationship. It might have to do with something that you are having to grapple with in terms of secrets or family patterns or things that are a little hidden from you. And especially as Saturn North Node are also in the 12th house, Jupiter moon in the fourth house, there may be some psychological things that you're having to work through. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it's showing you that this is not just about the outer world. It's not just the material stuff that's changing. Um, and the kite that is forming here with Neptune in your first house, and then Venus as she goes into your seventh house, with the trine between the Pluto and Uranus, is actually showing something of a romantic or a business relationship dynamic that can actually feel like it's improving. So whatever this is, whatever the thing is that you're dealing with, there is a lot of room for improvement and support that's coming from people, social groups, friends, life partners, etc. The Mars Mercury can create a bit of a challenge behind the scenes. A certain amount of testiness or even issues of contention around finances or around any income that comes in through clients or inherited income or mm, things that come through the marital partner, for example. So there may be something that you just need to deal with. That's not a problem, but that also can be part of what's affecting the house of gains here, where Pluto is as well. All right, so good luck with that, Aries, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, so now we have Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And we're looking at Pluto moving through your 10th house of your social status, your ambitions, your career, or your vocation. And when I say social status, it can also include marital status, something changing in the way that you reach out into the world, something changing in the way the world reflects back to you as well. And this will be again a year and a half in progress. So this is not necessarily a surprise. It's just that now you realize what I need to surrender. What do I need to let go of? What was the thing that I thought was just there, and now I realize it's not there anymore. Is this I need to step out differently into the world? Um, is this a new career? Is this a sense of my participation out in the world needing to change? Certainly, with the reference to the North Node and Saturn in your 11th house, that's also part of the bigger picture for you, with reference to social groups or friends, that there's something new coming in there, something different, something that may have had to be restructured with the Saturn there in the 11th house, that has affected the way that you're engaging with people. Um, and Jupiter is ruling that with the moon from the third house. So this could very well be about friends or your siblings, your local space and your neighborhood and so on. And so there is some really big dynamic of change here that has been brewing all this time. And now you're going forward with this new thing. Now I understand this is my new way of showing up. Venus, your ruler, is actually moving in. I'm going to see if I can move that ahead. No, it doesn't work. Venus is moving into, pardon me, Libra. And it's just not showing that yet because I'm just behind to get the Taurus on the wheel there. But Venus is at this point that Pluto is stationing in your sixth house, in her other sign of rulership, which makes her very strong. So your ruler is very strong. And this is very harmonizing with this Pluto out in the world, changing your vision, changing your ambition, changing your relationship, even potentially with your parents, changing your relationship to your boss, to rulers, to leaders of all kinds, to authority figures. And that Venus harmonizes quite a lot of what is going on in your everyday life. This can also be with reference to health. That's creating a grand air trine once she moves there into Libra. It's a trine with Uranus and Pluto that is incredibly supportive. And there's a mini grand trine that is also with the Saturn Neptune. We have to leave Saturn out for now, but anyway, the Neptune in your 12th house, which is again creating this kite configuration that's extremely supportive for you, that has something to do with your everyday, how you're showing up, how you're taking care of yourself. Sixth house is your health, or grappling with illness. With Venus, by the way, and the Sun in poor dignity in the sixth, I would watch out for indulgence, especially because here we have Chiron in a square, Chiron from the 12th house with Eris in a square to Jupiter, which suggests that if there are health issues, Venus opposite Neptune moving into the 6th house, Venus can be issues of blood sugar, liver issues, issues around, diabetes or whatever. If you have any of those kinds of symptoms of dysregulated blood sugar levels or things that come through self-indulgence. You're not working on yourself, you're not developing yourself, you're not caring for yourself. These are things to pay attention to. And I would use this energy to resolve, use the energy to improve this. I just have to save my dog from barking at the mail, the postal worker here. Just give me a second. Okay, Taurus, so I think you get the idea. You're adapting now to what has changed in your world. The support that you're getting is considerable and also probably coming from within your family or friends. And it's just about now moving forward in this new way that you may have not expected to show up out in your life, but it's necessary now. So you're moving into a new phase of this. But look back over the last 18 months and especially since March. Um, Even March of 2025 and March of 2024 to really look at what's changed and what you know now needs to be resolved or put aside or deepened one way or another. All right, good luck with that, Taurus. I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. You're very much featured in this grand trine that is the air grand trine that's provoked by Venus moving into the fifth house for you. Very favorable. So Venus is not showing up as already in Libra, but she is. I'm just having to move the dial to get everybody on the ascendant. You've got Uranus in your first house until the 7th of November. So just 3 more weeks of this. And you are in this new phase of being yourself, showing up in a different way in so many ways. And there seems to be a very public role for you. This does not have anything to do with fame, by the way. When I say a public role, it means that you're showing up out in your world, out in with your people, with your community, with your colleagues, and so on. And maybe a family role, maybe the role of a parent that's expanding, some kind of expanded sense of self. And Venus is supporting that right now. As Pluto is moving direct in your ninth house, these last 18 months have probably shown you, at the very least, what you don't want anymore, what you know is not your life purpose, what you know you're done with. And what Pluto can show you going forward is how to actually restructure, work deeper into this new sense of your meaning in life, whether it's um, your overall sense of life purpose, or is it your sense of what you have faith in, what you believe in, um, which is like an underpinning of everything that you do. What you believe in, what you have faith in, is guiding every choice that you make. It's guiding your thinking. It's guiding how you show up. And with Uranus in the first house, this is adding to the agitation for change, and you'll feel that more strongly next year. We'll talk also about Uranus as it's going back into Taurus in a couple of weeks' time. I'll come back and we'll talk about that again. But for now, you really are benefiting from looking back over 18 months and trying to understand how you have transformed, how you've changed. This might also be with reference to something that you have learned or want to learn or teach or want to teach. This can be about people who are guides or counselors to you, or you becoming one to somebody else. This can also be the relationship with your father that is changing quite considerably. It may be generalized to your parents, but especially the father, or your role as a father that can be changing quite considerably. And then with your ruler, with Mars in the sixth house, there is some new cycle for change, and that's coming up just days after this. I will do a separate video on that because it's just too much to cover everything in one go. But that in your sixth house, it shows that you're having to work hard. There's something that you're really pushing up against. If there's something to do with either a health concern or a need to really grapple with I don't know, court cases or some kind of challenge. You're up for it. You definitely have the capacity to deal with this right now. If it has been something that you've been struggling with in terms of people who are not really working on your behalf, or that you're finding that you're struggling a little bit because it feels like somebody's holding you down or you're resisting, with the Pluto particularly, but also with the Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node going back and forth between the 10th and the 11th, notice where you may have been the one that has held yourself back and that you are holding an old paradigm of what hierarchy looks like or who has power over you. And notice that influence. Does religion have power over you? Does your political belief have power over you? Do your opinions stop you from asking questions? It's not very Gemini, but I'm just giving you some ideas. Just notice that the Gemini does have a lot of opinions, but they come and go, and so maybe that's part of the problem. Is too much superficiality. Um, and so maybe this is part of the deepening of that with the Mars Mars Mercury. You have to somehow work hard. You have to struggle through this obstacle, whatever that is for you, that is going to produce really great results. Venus in the fifth house alone, in her strong dignity, trinal to you, trinal to the Uranus that's in your first house, trinal to the Pluto that's in the ninth house. These are really favorable houses, very fortunate houses. One of the things that can represent, the way I look at it, as these air signs are asking for you to communicate in a way, to reach out from the heart, to reach out in a way that can inform or touch people's sensitivities and heart. Um, Certainly, your confidence is very high at this time with the Jupiter in your second house. That can be also where you're finding a lot of support coming through family or support coming through income. Whatever you're gaining from your career can be really relied upon or can be beneficial, or maybe you're the one having to do a lot of supporting. Beware of spending a lot, especially as Venus goes into the fifth, and then you've got Jupiter in the second. So beware of spending carelessly. Beware of investing carelessly as well. That can also be the Mercury Mars in your sixth, where you realize, oh, this investment didn't pay out. It didn't work in the way that I'd hoped. So just take your time and reconsider what you're investing in. Right. So big changes on the horizon for you, and you already are feeling that in the last 18 months. This is not new to you, Gemini. So good luck with all of that. I'll come back and we'll talk about Uranus moving out of your sign in a video very soon. Okay. Bye for now. And Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Here we're looking at Pluto in the eighth house for Cancer. And this is corresponding to Venus moving into your fourth house just hours before Pluto is direct. So the chart is not reflecting that simply because I'm moving the dial so that I can have you on the ascendant. But we're going to pretend that Venus is in the very, very, very first degree of the fourth house and Pluto is direct. And what we find here is this grand air trine in all of the secret houses of the chart, of the psychological places of the chart, the more intimate parts of the natal chart. That can also be, those are known as the sort of the moksha house, not sort of, but really moksha houses, the liberation houses, the houses where we move away, we detach from the three-dimensional experience of life and the material aspects of life. And it doesn't mean that that implies poverty. It's just that there's a realization of the completeness of life beyond the three-dimensional. So here that's triggering with a very strong Venus, a sense of deep peace or harmony or ease in terms of your inner home, your sense of your psychological home that you may not have felt for some time. Venus has not been really supportive of you for quite some time. Venus in the third house can be quite helpful, but she's been with the South Node and she's in her fall. She's not been very supportive. Now, when she moves in as the fourth house, she's at home and in your house of home. And at the time that Pluto is stationing direct, you have Jupiter exalted in your sign with the moon, your ruler, along with Jupiter. So this is incredibly favorable for Cancer. This is a trine with Saturn that's building over the next few weeks that gives you a great sense of long-term planning, long-term vision. And a lot of that vision has to do with what you have understood behind the scenes, behind the eyes. This is coming through issues that might have to do with life and death. It might have to do with loss. Might have to do with the loss of an individual or the impending loss of an individual, or it can just be it can be a material loss, that there's something that you're having to surrender in a way that is it's difficult, but at the same time you know that it's going to bring you to a more profound place. With Pluto in the eighth house, which represents fears and crisis and overcoming those same things and overcoming family patterns, overcoming unconscious patterns, issues around shared resources or money in forms that come from colleagues or not colleagues, clients or marriage partners or business partners, or from government agencies and so on. When Pluto is moving forward, something in this, especially with the trine supporting it from Venus, something can resolve or something can unblock in a way that has been kind of pending for a while. And it has been expected. It's not new. This is not something out of the blue necessarily. It is something that has been in the ether already for 18 months. And listen to the introduction if you haven't already to understand more of that. Pardon me. And you will understand that this is actually part of making you feel more courage in going towards what would be either your relationship to money or intimacy shared with another person. And that intimacy can be sexual, it can be intellectual, it can be emotional, psychological, just feeling more vulnerable with another person. This is part of that dynamic. Um, and Mars and Mercury are in your fifth house of romance and creativity. And that would also describe perhaps a deeper bonding or a deeper excitement around a relationship of intimacy, which will be supported with Venus then for the next few weeks as she goes through your fourth house. Pardon me. And Venus is opposing Neptune, and Neptune is creating this mini grand trine that it's holding already since the early part of this, let's say, what was it, April, from April of this year. And it continues for quite some time, for another month or so. Um, no, Neptune for another week, in fact, will continue to be there. With Pluto, it continues its journey. And then in another month, 3 weeks, I guess, Uranus goes back into your 11th house. So this is a moment in time that's crystallizing this opportunity for change that can be very creative for Cancer. Because here we've got this really supportive energy of dynamism with Mars in its own house, trining back to you, trining up to the North Node. Um, and the fact that you have this perhaps creative insight that comes from actually unconscious things that might come through a spiritual practice or an occult practice or working through the mystery schools of things or meditation, might come through ancestral healing, because we're fourth, eighth, 12th also links us to our ancestors, links us to the lineage, links us to what has gone before we were born here. Um, so these are opportunities for you to see these things, and then as things evolve, you still have the template. Now you're working with that. You're still working with that template. Very, very favorable moment in time through October and into the end of November, and particularly strongly so for Cancer, because of that Jupiter in your sign. Um, yeah, and the Pluto in the eighth house can have you really shifting the gears around marriage. If you are married, there can be a big transformation within the marriage. There can be a transformation coming from your marital partner, that the partner themselves is going through a huge transformation that you are then grappling with, but it can also be that there's something transforming in the dynamic of the marriage itself. Um, Again, if you notice, the eighth house is one of these unconscious places in the chart. So some of what is coming through may have come through you, that you're unconsciously attracting something desirable or undesirable that's appearing now outside as something coming at you. But be careful that you're aware, especially for Cancer, Sun, Moon, Rising, you're aware of the power of your thinking, the power of creating with your thinking, with your emotional attitude, with the way that you're holding yourself at whatever vibration you're holding yourself at, especially also because the South Node is in the third house of the mind. So there's a spiritualization potential here with the mind and the North Node taking you through the road to God, the ninth house representing your understanding of faith, what you believe in, and so on. So deeply impactful time for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising, and on a real spiritually growth oriented moment, and even psychically. Again, if you're working with the occult, if you're working in healing areas, especially with that Neptune now slowly moving into your 10th house to stay, this is a great time to work, take it seriously and work towards that. Um, to see really great results. But you already have this, it's underway. A year and a half you've had to work on these things, and now you're just going forward and continuing along the journey. So clear out all the things that are no longer relevant, things that are no longer, it's very obvious they're just not part of you any longer. Just thank them and say goodbye. Move along. Okay. See you in the next video. And for Leo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this Pluto is in your house of relationships. So it's the other across the way from you and changing the dynamic with your relationships, and that you have been keenly aware of in the last couple of years, but more aware than ever since March of 2024. So we're in a position now where you're retracing some of the steps that you've taken since then. And you want to really start to be clear what it is that needs to change in relationships. Is the partnership finished? Are you entering into a new one and you want to be different as you move in that direction? And you have the trine that is supported from your third house of communication, that is in all of the air signs, that supports you interacting and communicating in different ways, in a way that's very harmonious with that Venus there. The Neptune in the ninth house can also have you, since April, feeling a much more spiritual or elevated sense of life, a meaning of life, a purpose of life, your own purpose, your own reason for being here. And with this trine now to Pluto in your seventh and Uranus in your 11th, there's something here that you want to create in terms of new bonds, new relationships, a new vision for your future. And this can be business oriented as well. If you are a business person, you've got your ruler in the third house, which is a commercial house, which is graced by Venus in her own house. And then if especially if it's going to be a home business, this is even more significant. Doesn't have to be, but if it's a home business or a business that you're working online for, you have two really big pluses there, which is that you've got Mercury and Mars being very strong in domicile in the fourth house, in your house of home and that can be coming through literally a home office, or it can be a business that also centers on home, property, real estate, and things like that, on housing. And then, of course, the other aspect of this is the Jupiter moon in the 12th, very, very strong for you as you are, if you do connect online. And this is also third house, 11th house, it's internet and the audience that you have. And so maybe this is also the Pluto where you're changing the way you engage with clients, you're changing the way that you engage with the audience, you're expanding your audience reach, changing that, especially with Uranus there, and also taking advantage of clients from foreign lands, foreign places. And the eighth house is also the gains from clients. Um, it also references like gains that are coming through other people. It can be royalties and things like that. And you have Jupiter from the 12th ruling the North Node in the eighth house. So this would be an excellent time for you to reflect on starting a business or expanding your business or having a new vision for your business. And and this would be quite a great use of this dynamic of this time. If this is a marital situation, you already know what's going on. I'm not going to be telling you anything new. You already, at the very least, intuit that. You understand what's going on. And so there may be something that has separated or left in terms of the committed partnership. We could call it a committed partnership, or again, the business partners, that's also seventh house stuff. Um, and so there's something that you're now ready to face. Now you've understood it, you let it go. There may have been a time when you blocked it or you didn't want to see it, but now you get it and you're changing. It might be you that's deciding to change, or it might be something to do with the quality of the marriage. It might be that you're recognizing now we need to communicate better. Venus in the third will really help you with that. All of what I've just described is really going to be helpful for that, that you can find a new way of communicating with your partner, communicating around your future, what it is that you hold together and what do you see together, can be extremely auspicious. Saturn going through the eighth house with the North Node can be similar in the sense that Saturn is about restructuring the intimate or more hidden aspects of the relationship, what you receive from relationship. You're having to pick up more of the load, as it were, or at least what we could describe as taking responsibility for what's going on. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily wrong. It just means that that you are acknowledging it's part of your duty, part of what you need to do. And this is a big part of the journey of the last few months, and especially in the last 18 months, where you're really looking into integrity, which is a key word for Leo, very important for Leo. And that can also be tied into how you are aware, you become aware of power struggles in relationships, the power dynamics in relationship, and how that might be throwing back on you, your own sense of insecurity around yourself. Leo can often have this until the lesson is learned, and that there can be a great deal of self-doubt. And so there can be either this bluffing or this blustery kind of big personality that masks that, or there can be a shyness that keeps you from yourself, basically. So this is where you can really step into that. You will have already known in the last 18 months what's going on and what needs to change. Now, as Pluto moves forward, this is where the change is going to happen. All right, you're moving into new territory now in relationships. So this is the next thing. This is the future as you're going towards that. So good luck with that, Leo. See you in the next video. And Virgo, this is now, pardon me, Pluto in your sixth house is now going direct, the house of your work, your health, your everyday sort of activities, what you're taking responsibility for in terms of what supports you physically, health-wise, and the duties and obligations that you have as well. And Uranus is trining that from the 10th, and Venus is trining that from the 2nd. And especially because you also have Jupiter and Moon really strong in your 11th house. This can have a real optimizing effect on your career or on your way of working, engaging in your day-to-day career or your vocation or the job that you do. There's some benefit here. The benefit can also be in terms of a boost to your salary, a boost to your income, a boost to support coming through other people. It can also be that there's a need to ask for something, ask for a pay rise, or ask for a new promotion, or ask for a new role, a new task, something like that. Because you've got Mercury, your ruler, with Mars in the third. So there's some dynamic need for you to work to your own aims and goals, especially as Uranus is in the 10th. You're seeing your career and yourself and your role in the world really differently now, especially since July. And that continues now until the beginning of November, and then it comes back at the end of April. So this particular journey that we've been on here has just been a glimpse into what next year will bring. But prepare yourself now. That might mean that you need to actually make a strategize a plan and actually have a blueprint for your career success or business success or training that you need to do. You recognize I need to learn these skills or I need to do this thing. There may be something going on in the life of a sibling, um, any sibling, but especially with Jupiter in the 11th house, it could be an elder sibling that is beneficial to you, that is supportive of you, or that is going through a really easy, good time, and that actually shines back on you, can help you. Um, and also, it can be friends, so groups of friends, expanding a sense of how you participate out in society, in the world, expanding. Um, and then, and that the Pluto in the what we call the kite here with Venus from the second house to the sixth house in the bigger trine to the 10th house, and then Neptune from the eighth house can also mean that you're recognizing something about your values and the values that you share, perhaps with a business partner or with your life partner, something that is key to your future, key to you going forward. Jupiter is in the house of your future, ruling that North Node in the house of your better half or your business partner, your life partner, etc. So there's quite a strong pull forward. It's a future forward kind of energy that's really, really supported here. It's much, much nicer in so many ways, easier, in meaning a flowy kind of feeling of what's coming next, but it's not yet done. And you won't really be experiencing, I think, the results of this until well into February, when finally Saturn, Neptune already on the 26th of January, but then Saturn moves out of your seventh house, which is right opposite you. So that's impacting you really, really strongly. And that takes a bit of the pressure off. There'll be much more clarity around there, but you already have a keen sense of what this feels like to you, your everyday life, your health, if you have had health issues. Um, Especially with Pluto going in the sixth house and in a trine to Uranus, it can also be very much related to how you are showing up every day. You know, are you consistently taking care of yourself, and does that need more of your attention? And I would, if you have had health issues, take them seriously. When Pluto goes through the sixth house, it'll show up all the weak links in terms of your everyday health or the work habits that are self-defeating. So all of these things will have shown up already. I'm not telling you anything new. So good luck with that, Virgo. I'll see you in the next video. And so for Libra, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant sign, we have good news for you. Your ruler is going into your first house, and that triggers this lovely kite. So you are the star of this moment in time where each time a planet ingresses your sign, then it triggers this bigger grand air trine that is permanently here with us until 2026, or even an extended period, actually. It'll be several years, but really very precisely in the early degrees till 2026 and going forward even 4 or 5 years. So you're part of this bigger theme of major change. Jupiter, pardon me, Pluto has been in your fifth house retrograding since the 4th of May. But really, it's been at this particular degree, and now it's coming back to this degree since March of 2024. So if you go back in time, you'll see that whatever's coming through now is harmonizing with what you wanted to change or what you recognized needed to change, what you needed to sort out, but just couldn't kind of get a grip on. And now you're moving forward with this. And that grand trine, the air grand trine, includes Uranus in your ninth house, which is changing your reference point in terms of what you believe in, what you have faith in, maybe also the dynamic around your sense of purpose. And especially with Pluto going into the fifth house, it's about showing up in a more authentic way. It's about stripping away things that are inauthentic. And this is part of the shadow side of Libra, which is trying to make everything look good. I want to present well, therefore I just pretend everything's fine. Um, and it's a little bit phony, and in some cases it's extremely phony. And what that does to you is it weakens your sense of self. And this is one of the reasons that Libra has a slightly ambiguous sense of self. Unlike Aries across the table from you, you are sometimes always sensing what other people might need. And this is part of this understanding. I need to be more of myself, and I need to bring more of myself through my life. This is a great time to be working on that. And also, especially because Neptune is preparing a long journey in your seventh house. I've done other videos on that, so do listen if you haven't already heard the Neptune going through Aries video yet. Um, and also because Jupiter is with the moon in your 10th house, so things to do with your ambitions and your drive and your vision for your social status and how you want to be remembered, your sense of what this life means to you is really, really important right now. And then Saturn being in your sixth house helps you, and it's been there also since 2023 when Pluto moved into your fifth house. Um, that Saturn is coming back just for a little while till the 14th of February, where it's really about looking at the day-to-day stuff, the organization of your day-to-day life, the little things like the yeses and the nos that stack up into the bigger thing. Where's the boundary? Where do I put my yes? Where do I put myself first? And this is feeding into all of that dynamic around who you are. Um, with Pluto in the fifth house as well, it's about recognizing where there may be issues around love relationships or dynamics in love, where you have to acknowledge any kind of manipulative behavior that can be, trying to get your way in terms of a dynamic around relationship, especially as Neptune is in the seventh in a sextile to that Pluto. And it can be that there's either the other person is not clear to you, or that you are not clear to the other person, or that you're operating in a way that is not entirely above board. So it's really a good time to be clear. What are my goals? What are my ambitions in terms of love, in terms of how I engage in romantic relationships? And there can be such, with Pluto in the fifth, there can be such an urge to be in a romantic relationship that you actually can mess it up because there's too much intensity. So again, am I overwhelming the other in terms of this intensity? Chiron and Aries together in your seventh house of relationship are also reflecting that there's some healing that's required in terms of relationship dynamics. How do I do that? How do I do relationships? And in this particular moment, Mars, which is ruling your relationship house, is with Mercury in the second house. So there's some aspect also that has to do with your self-worth, with your value. This is a great time for boosting that, for really seeing your worth, and for recognizing that if you feel like you've got to chase after somebody, or chase after a career, or chase after a particular acknowledgement from some authority figure, then you're still not really fully living yourself. And that comes back to the Pluto in the fifth. It's about showing up authentically, being your genuine self as you express yourself going through your life. And with Mars in the second, you have this capacity now to feel a certain drive that's coming from your self-worth, from your value. There can be something that even connects directly to money, that is like, okay, I'm worth this much salary, or this much effort, or this much whatever, and recognizing that there's something that is worth fighting for, worth acting upon, and worth having a goal for. That's goals around money. A really good time to plan that as well. The Mars Mercury in the second house can also reflect issues that you're having to grapple with in terms of family. And that also can come back to the Pluto in the fifth house, because perhaps there's been something over the last year and a half that you're kind of testing out in a new way of showing up, but your family is not really on board with it, or they don't accept it, or they don't recognize you, and they want you back in your box. They want you back where you belong. The fifth house also represents children. And again, this can represent issues around the dynamic that is changing around having children, or around the lives of your own children, which will be a transformational process in and of itself. So in this moment for Libra, going forward, while Pluto is still there for another 18 or so years, you have a lot of personal growth and transformation in the area of children. That can change you. Of course, having children will change you, that's guaranteed. But also the notion of what's going on in their lives will be changing. And that might be something you're responding to. So I think we've covered it there, Libra. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. So Pluto, your modern ruler, is in your fourth house of your psychological home, the foundation of your life, foundation of your sense of self and security. That may have been challenged. It might have been pretty rocky over the last year and a half, or especially over the last 5 months since May, since Pluto actually stationed retrograde at 3 degrees. Now Pluto is moving direct, and it's going to cross that point, and you're moving in new territory into 2026. So whatever you've learned about your emotional needs or your psychological security or your emotional security or your home and what that represents to you. What does home mean to me? That can include literal real estate, or it can include the sense of home and your lineage. All of that is kind of understood. You've grappled with it, you're dealing with that, and now you're moving forward in this new way. So whatever you have learned through that, you're moving beyond this now, from now on. Um, Uranus is in your eighth house in a trine to this Pluto, and Venus has just moved into your 12th house in a trine to the Pluto, creating a grand air trine. And at the very top of that grand air trine, or as a part of that grand air trine, we have a mini grand trine, and that includes Neptune in your sixth house. So here we have what can be described as disappointment in terms of your everyday experience that has been really highlighted or really shown to you over the last 4 months. So April, May, June, July, no longer, April, May, June, July, August, September, and into October. So they're really the last 7 months where Neptune has been in the sixth house. Can it be 7 months? It's been a while. So yeah, no, we call that 6 months. We're going to call that 6 months. And that is telling you something that Venus is trying to highlight right now in opposition from your 12th house. What am I motivated by? Where am I not being supported? Are there people that are not really on the page with me? And do I need to change that? And Pluto, we come back to Pluto and find this reinforcement or a sense of grounding in what you need to be happy, what you need to feel solid, what you need to feel maybe more connected to your everyday life. Your traditional ruler, Mars, is in your first house, which makes this extremely powerful, this moment in time for you. Mars is angular, Pluto is also angular, and it's with Mercury. So there's a lot that you are ready to take action on, communicate about. You're feeling motivated, you're feeling really driven at this time, and especially because the North Node and Saturn are in your fifth house, and Jupiter, Moon are really helping you out, exalted in the ninth house. This is a great opportunity for you to really plan ahead. It's several weeks like this, and I'll do another video about this as Mars, your ruler, starts to trine Saturn and trine Jupiter, and it's quite a powerful moment in time for you. Um, so whatever you have learned for the last 18 months, let it go, work with it, recognize this is the end of that. This is the new thing. This is the new vision. This is the new version, the new day to day, perhaps as well. And recognize that there's a part of you that you are growing out of, and it may have felt a little threatening. It may have been emotionally quite disturbing, but you feel now you've gone through it and you're capable. Now you figure it out. Next year, you're going to have Uranus coming back to where it is in the eighth. So there's going to be more work going on psychologically, sort of digging into family stuff, digging into psychological stuff. The fourth, the eighth, and the 12th, where there's a lot of activity for you right now, are these psychological places in the chart, and you have this strong dynamic for change that can come from within. And this can even be, quite psychic or quite perceptive at the very least, which you tend to be anyway. Scorpio tends to be, I mean, at the very least, psychologically observant and noticing what's going on, things that people don't necessarily notice. But this will help you to sense that from behind the scenes as well, to get that from inner guidance or spiritual guidance. This can, of course, have an impact on where you live, and it can have an impact on your important relationships and the intimacy that comes from that. So lots and lots and lots of change for Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Rising. But I will come back in the next video and explain bit by bit how all of the next few weeks are shaping up as well, adding to the puzzle pieces. So wishing you all the best. I'll see you in the next video. And Sagittarius, I'm going to try not to cough now, Sagittarius. I'm having a rough morning here. I'm not actually ill, I'm just having a real struggle with coughing. I'm going to try not to do that to you. Um, right, and so Pluto is in your third house of what you might consider to be the choice or the your sense of your willpower, the thing that you're aiming for, the current life goals, but also third house of where you connect with people, how you connect with siblings, how you connect with your neighbors, how you connect with your local space, what you do every day. It's a very kind of busy day-to-day energy. How you communicate and connect in all different ways. And here we have a really strong impact from Pluto going in the third to a trine to Uranus, which is changing you and the dynamic you have in relationships, maybe even the actual individuals that you relate to. And then in a beautiful grand air trine with Venus, very, very powerfully, newly just into your 11th house of your future, your vision for your future. It's the house of gains as well from what you do. So this can be an incredibly gainful time as well, really supportive in that sense. And especially because also you've got Jupiter really strong in the eighth house. So getting something from a partner, from marriage, from a business relationship, from clients, etc., seems to be really supportive for you right now. Could be a great time to raise your prices, for example, if you work that way. Um, and Jupiter is your ruler, so even more so. Jupiter is exalted, so you can take advantage of this. And then the Venus in the 11th also is where you can meet somebody important. It's about charm and it's about your grace and about connecting with people that are very favorable, potentially literally women, but not just. It's really the dynamic of relationship. And that's really favorable, but also including the vision that you have for yourself. So it seems like there's an optimistic edge that happens now where Pluto in the third is quite intense, brutal honesty. It's like the capital T truth. It's what is honest and real, pointing out the things that need to be said, that is actually like let's get down to brass tacks. That's the Pluto in the third. And it's where you start to feel more real in the way that you express yourself. It's like not talking about the weather, not messing around with um, I don't know, things that are wasting your time. You feel more real, and this will certainly have an impact on your relational dynamic, which is changing over the next few months in quite a dramatic way, and which you've already been aware of. You've already noticed that. Neptune is moving, is part of this process of the opposition to Venus. It's a mini grand trine that includes this Neptune. It is moving back into your fourth house, but for the moment, it's in your house of love and romance and children and your creative self-expression. Your creativity might be coming through a sense of what you've learned about yourself or about things that you've learned in terms of a sense of disappointment or inadequacy or a sense of what you haven't yet noticed in terms of your own capacity or what you've only just noticed in terms of that capacity. And that will be a bigger part of the next couple of years. But right now it's highlighted. And so this can be a beautiful opportunity for you to speak with clarity, to make choices with clarity. Um, it will also, with Pluto in the third, change your relationship to siblings, especially if you have needed to redress the balance in terms of sibling dynamics or extended family dynamics. If it's about learning or teaching in some dimension, then this can also be extremely well supported. That you get deeper into something, that you get more knowledgeable about something, especially with your ruler in the eighth. It can be something that is kind of like the hidden aspects, the occult stuff, and like what we're doing here, for example, or yeah, or even psychological things. Pluto has a lot to do with psychological patterns as well. Mars and Mercury in the 12th house are showing that there can be some aspects that are working against you in terms of things that you're not realizing, and that can be yourself, it can be your unconscious, it can be your attitude towards yourself, or it can be people who are kind of sniping behind your back. If that is something that becomes really clear to you, well, then this Uranus is doing you a favor and showing you now where it's just not worth it. I'm out of here. I'm done. This is in trine to Pluto that says, "Oh, I get it now. I see that the third house friends, not really my friends. This was the wrong crowd. I shouldn't be hanging with this crowd." Um, so all of this is working in your favor, and it can be extremely enriching for Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising, definitely an era of major change that is bringing you more closely home to yourself, much more of the creative self coming forward in the next year or so. I will come back and tell you more about that in the next video. Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This Pluto is in your second house of money and your resources and your sense of self-esteem, how you relate to your family, what supports you in general. And that can be even a relationship with food, for example, or a relationship to your day-to-day habits, especially because you have Uranus changing your everyday, and that might have an impact on your health. And so there may be a realization around different ways of being in your day to day that are not working for you, and you're ready now to really get serious and plow your way through that. Um, Make some profound changes. There can be a profound change in your sense of what money is worth to you. What is the value of money? What are the value of possessions and things, the stuff of life? The second house is also your sense of worth and value. What do you feel your esteem is worth? And that for sure in the last 18 months will have been tested for sure because we're talking about Pluto, and you may have come across a certain fear that you weren't really, I don't know, valuable any longer. You may have had a threat to your job or your employment situation, or you may have had a sense of, a loss around your social status, for example, a loss around something to do with how you thought your career would be, and now it's realization that it's different, and that has pushed you into having a different purpose, a different sense of what you're here for, and that Pluto is building that confidence, it's building that strength. Beware of power struggles around money. Power struggles also around values, like I think this is important and you don't share my value system. And, be careful around things like that. Beware of excluding people based on things that feel extremely potent in the intensity of the moment, and then realizing later you've lost a good friend or you've lost a marital partner or whatever based on a kind of dogmatic feeling around values. That's part of a Capricorn theme with the Aquarius on the second. With Pluto there, also now in a trine to Uranus and in a mini grand trine with Neptune. This is part of a kite that has just been triggered by Venus moving in to your 10th house. So whatever is going on, really, especially since yesterday, or meaning today, as I'm recording this on the 13th, this is really favorable for your career. Big changes in terms of your work, in terms of the capacity to be recognized for what you're doing. And again, that's the Pluto in the second. And it can be, with the Uranus and changing your everyday, maybe in terms of the routine and how you are doing your job, how it's all panning out for you. And Saturn, your ruler, is in the third house, where it might even be literally, I have to, change the way I organize my commute, or I have to change the way I organize my short-term activity or my relationship energy or something like that. Very, very favorable. It seems to be very, very favorable for you in terms of whatever this new opportunity is. People look on you favorably, higher ups, administrators, bosses, all those kinds of people, marital partners look at you favorably, especially also because you have Jupiter in your seventh. And so there's something very constructive happening in the relationship dynamic. And if relationship is called to end for whatever reason, I can't see your natal chart, but if that's the case for you, it is for your greater good when Jupiter goes through the seventh house, especially when it's highly dignified. It doesn't always mean that the relationship is the answer. It means that the whatever the consequences around relationship are, it's beneficial to you, brings benefit to you. This can also be that your partner, if you're in a relationship, if you have a life partner, that they are receiving benefit and that their life is thriving, that they're doing well, which of course shines back on you. Your exaltation ruler, Mars, is in the 11th house, also the house of gains. And so we have Venus in the 10th, we have Pluto in the second, now direct, and we have Mars very, very strong in its own sign in the 11th house of gains, your exaltation ruler. Um, Mercury is also there with it, so there may be something that you're negotiating around new package for work, for example, new package for employment, the details of, how you will benefit from what you do, for example. If this is about social groups or connecting with social groups, you become quite powerful. So there's something that you're doing as a leader, um, as an organizer, somebody who gets into the nitty-gritty and solves the problem in terms of the society or the group or the association or whatever. Could even be in terms of the corporate dynamic if you're working in a corporate field or an institutional field, which is quite typically Capricorn anyway. Um, what else have we got Capricorn? Yeah, so Neptune on the fourth. So there is still this sense of disappointment or not lacking clarity around home, lacking clarity potentially even emotionally. Venus is now improving that sense of, okay, things will be fine, things will be okay. Um, Whatever the issue is around home, it's not going to be resolved before February, March. It's still just leave it for now. It doesn't mean you can't deal with things that need to be dealt with, but it may be that this is just it's just not the time. You're not going to get the house that in the way that you wanted it, or you're still not sure, should we move, should we stay? Just sit with it for now. This is not an easy time to make plans around what feels like security for you, home, security, this kind of thing. Venus rules your fifth house of love, children, creativity, and so on. And she's in strong dignity at the 10th house. So that can also be really, really powerful. If you're not in a relationship and you'd like to be, this would be a great time to get out and socialize or meet colleagues, meet meet people through work, meet outside of work to do activities with people that you work with, if that's the case, or have a friend introduce you who is somebody that they know through their work, for example. And this is really favorable then for a really good relationship. And alternatively, it could be through a club or a role that you play in terms of the dynamic, a social dynamic. So if you're not already in a relationship, that can really help you find one. All right, Capricorn, I will see you in the next video. Aquarius, well, guess who's stationing direct in your house? So you've got Pluto now moving forward after having lots of probably personal reflection and a sense of yourself having to change and maybe finding that difficult, maybe finding that you're bumping up against people in ways that hadn't happened before. Just as this starts to move forward, I'm just noticing, of course, that the moon is in your seventh house in opposition to Pluto. So just as you're experiencing this change in a fleeting way, in a very fleeting way, you might become aware of something in relationship that is just a clarifying moment. And this will be probably not news to you. Go back over 18 months and realize what you've been kind of chugging away, struggling to change, didn't really manifest in the way that you thought it might, or it wasn't ready yet, or you knew it was going to change any minute, and still it's like hanging on. Uh, or maybe you were hanging on. And this is a bigger part of the dynamic of this moment, which is let it go. Now, you've done the dissolution part. Now it's time to build back and create. And we're moving into new territory as you go forward. Into 2026, we're moving into degrees that we have not yet been in your sign. You go up to 5 degrees. So if you especially have Aquarius up to 6 or 7 degrees of Aquarius, you're really going to be impacted. And of course, those of you from 0 to 4 have been very strongly impacted already. So do listen to the introduction because this is very personal to you, Aquarius. Um, and maybe also how you connect with what's going on socially, like how you interact with the social changes and the things that are going on. You might find that there's a lot of resonance there. So just as Pluto is stationing direct, just a few hours earlier, Venus also ingressed into her own sign in the 9th house. Super favorable for you. It's trine. It's optimistic. It brings a feeling of desire to learn more, desire to understand more, desire to experience more, having a sense of a favorable understanding of what you have faith in, what you believe in, what you want to achieve, why you feel you're here. And Uranus has been also in your fifth house of self-expression and romance and how you create, how you reach out into your creative dynamic, even entrepreneurially as well as artistically. And this is in a grand air trine that Venus has just created, because now she's come to the beginning of Libra. And at the same time, there's this mini grand trine that is, sorry, wrong side, mini grand trine that is forming with Neptune. So it's not the moon, but there is actually a mini grand trine with the moon. There's two going on here. So there's actually two kites for you just after Pluto comes in. So this is really lovely for you. But it's unfortunately with the moon very fleeting. But let's say, anyway, come back to the Venus in opposition to Neptune. Neptune in the third house will also have shown you anywhere where there's some deception or a lack of clarity around communication or a lack of clarity around what you understand, what you need to know. Do you need to upgrade your skills? Do you need to teach new things? Do you need to teach in a in a way that is showing more of you, more of your difference, more of your different way of looking at life, more of your future-oriented way of looking at life? And and so this is something that you can really benefit from in these moments. You know, just take loads of notes, reflect on all of the different things that you want to manifest and create, and use this as a kind of a generative energy to launch this next new thing. It's deeply creative energy, great for writing, great for teaching, as I mentioned, speaking. If you are with Saturn now in your second house, your ruler, so Saturn is your traditional ruler and Uranus is your modern ruler. I tend to prefer Saturn or the traditional rulers because they're more clear about what's actually going on. And the outer planets are collective planets. But anyway, Saturn in your second house is coming back to where it was in April and May and giving you a reflection around either something to do with money and how you need to reorganize or restructure your money, or it's coming around how you are in terms of your values and how you're working with your values or your self-worth. All three can be part of the same issue. Um, or they may be different expressions of that in different areas of your life, but it can be very constructive again because you've become more clear about all of those things in the last few months. Now, with Saturn going back into the second and also Jupiter in your sixth, there can be something that you're ready to deal with in a constructive and lucrative way in your career, because Jupiter in the sixth house can bring you really lucky work or good fortune around work or around colleagues or around the context of your work. Just more enjoyment around work with a higher sense of meaning and purpose that you find in your work, all of which is working in your favor here. Really, really supportive around things to do with career and where you're going. And then to top that off, we have Mars in its own sign at the top of your chart with Mercury. And that also shows ambition and drive. And you understood something recently. You've got it. You understand where you want to go with this. Pluto is giving you this sense of, okay, I know where I need to step up. I know who I am. I also understand where I am in terms of my inner power, no longer getting pulled into power struggles with people that will have been a part of the last 2 years or more, and especially the last 18 months, and recognizing where those power struggles are coming from a place of inner weakness. Find that strength, get back into those shoes and find that inner solid strength, and you won't get bounced around. This is what this is about. And also, you know, try not to also try and dominate people. One challenge with that Mars up there, especially the Mercury Mars, is that it can have this energy of being really pushy or really pushing your way forward. Perhaps even a potential for being a bit self-centered, and that can work against you. So you have to also think in terms of what's good for me, where do I want to go, and how can I also work with others? And especially as the moon arrives, glides into your house of relationship just hours after this direct station. Um, that would be a good theme to work with. And how can I make this work for all of us? and uplift myself and be myself and show myself as exactly who I need to be going forward. But a really, really great opportunity for you. And I will speak to you in the next video. So Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Pluto has moved into your 12th, or is still in your 12th house, but moved in direct motion. And so over the last 18 months, you've had a lot of reflection on the things that you are understanding through lineage, through ancestors, through your spiritual guides, through your inner intuition, your sense of spirit, your sense of self. Meaning self in terms of the internal self, the self that you sense yourself to be. Um, and this can be extremely empowering because there's a confidence that you're building in terms of the divine or in terms of the hidden, what is hidden, hidden strength, the Pluto in the 12th. It can also show you where your unconscious mind can work against you. Uranus is in the fourth as well. So there can be in the last 18 months a real sense of instability, unsettledness around your home, around lineage, around your emotional stability, your psychological stability, for example. Venus is now in the eighth house, which represents also the unconscious mind or the sense of your psychological nature, your more private nature. These are the moksha houses, the fourth, the eighth, the 12th. All the water signs are dealing with the moksha houses basically. And so these are the places where there's something that you're learning about yourself, um, that is coming through either intuition or it's coming through otherworldly communication or it's coming through a knowledge that is psychological knowledge or occult knowledge, wisdom that is also perhaps an awareness of family patterns and how that may or may not have been supporting you. Um, Venus is bringing an incredible opportunity for working constructively with those things, whether it be occult knowledge or psychological stuff or intimacy. It's a great opportunity for developing intimacy. Venus is now in her place in the house of intimacy. Mars is in the ninth house of your sense of purpose with Mercury. So there's a feeling of being all fired up about what you're doing, um, and that can it can inspire you if you're in a relationship, for example, having a sense of a vision for the relationship. Jupiter is in your fifth house, trinal to you, trinal to that Mars Mercury, and I'll do a separate video on that. But Jupiter in the fifth just makes you feel wonderful because it's your ruler in the fifth house of good fortune and um, ninth house is also good fortune. These are trinal houses, and they have a sense of things are working out, things are moving in my direction, things are auspicious. There's a higher purpose to what I'm doing, and I'm all fired up about it. I'm motivated to do it. Um, the money issue is also reflected in Venus in the eighth house. How do you share resources? And this can be a little bit impinged by the opposition to Neptune in the second, where there can be something that's not entirely clear around money, um, around resources of all kinds, how you're setting that up, the nature of your possessions or the money that you have on hand. This is in a sextile to Pluto and a sextile to Uranus, where Pluto and Uranus are trining from your 12th back to your fourth. This might have something to do with an investment, property investment, investment in property abroad, or it can be something to do with family even. There may be some confusion or something unknown around family obligations. There may be a loss around something to do with money or family, a questioning around values or spiritualization around all of those things. Beware with Neptune, especially at the 0 degree point, where it's like there can be this a clouding of the judgment and over idealization and over optimism around things, and especially in opposition to Venus, that can have you taking action based on things that are not concrete, not really real. Especially with Jupiter, your ruler in the fifth, be careful of extravagance at this time. Beware of investments. Beware of things that you might you just give it a few days at the very least. Give it a few days, and you might even want to wait until Neptune moves back into your first house. and have a little bit more clarity around money management, around yourself, and so on. So just that's the one possibility there. Neptune in the second can have you lose some money or get scammed out of money or just mismanage things. And you've got Chiron and Eris there too. So again, just keeping that in mind. Um, yeah, and that Mars Mercury up in the ninth also can have you really fired up about knowledge, maybe even teaching, a new either thing that you want to learn or something you want to communicate as a counselor, advisor, teacher, guide. Um, And the Venus going into the eighth is very conducive to receiving from clients, taking advantage from, meaning financial, especially receiving benefits from people in your life in terms of partnerships, relationships, business, um, and of course, intimacy, which is the eighth house. So all very, very favorable. Really, really strong for Pisces. It's a strong year in general for Pisces. But just be careful to notice where there may be some unconscious blocks with that Pluto that are the things that are making you fearful of actually advancing. But this is now we're moving in a new area, a new direction, moving in this new place based on overcoming whatever those fears were over the last 18 months, or the confusion and the now increased awareness around how you might undermine yourself, how you might be undoing your own goodness and sabotaging your own progress, um, especially particularly around any issues that might have you holding yourself back based on self-worth. So use your creative expression for issues that are both about self-expression, but also around career. So your wisdom that is innate for Pisces, the innate wisdom, the innate understanding, and your creative potential is all going to be seen, and it's something that you can use in the world outside, that you can bring advantage to other people. All right, I think that covers it. So I wish you all a wonderful Pluto Direct, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Do please like and subscribe and all the usual stuff, and support me if you can via buy me a coffee or a chai, masala chai, in my preference, and or even a donation to PayPal would be so welcome. I'm very grateful for all of you who do that, and there are many of you who do that. I'm super, super grateful that you're there. Thank you so much. Bye for now.